County Committee of the Whole meeting for Tuesday, April 14th, 2026 will please come to order, and the clerk will call the roll.
Good afternoon, everyone. It is now 2:03 p.m. And as a reminder to all in attendance, this meeting is being recorded and live streamed on the county's YouTube page. Also, as a reminder to all meeting attendees seeking parking validation for today's meeting, please be sure to scan the QR code located on the back table near the chamber's entrance to claim your discount. If you do not already have a Metropolis account, you will need your license plate number to set up the account in advance of receiving your discount. Please be sure to complete this prior to the end of the meeting, as the QR code will be removed after the meeting. Calling the roll, Mr. Castleberry.
Here.
Mr. Gallagher.
Here.
Mr. Schlepper.
Here.
Ms. Conwell.
Present.
Mr. Jones.
Here.
Ms. Turner is absent at the moment. Mr. Hauser.
Here.
Ms. Simon. Here. Mr. Kelly.
Here.
Mr. Sweeney.
Present.
Council President Miller.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you very much. And item number 3 is public comment. Do we have anyone signed in?
Barbara Marino Pashal.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the committee.
Good afternoon. My name is Barbara Moreno-Paschal, and I am a managing attorney at the Legal Aid Society of Cleveland. At Legal Aid, we work to secure justice, equity, and access to opportunity for and with people who have low incomes. Legal Aid represents low-income homeowners in Cuyahoga County who are facing property tax foreclosure. We recognize the importance of collecting property taxes in order to provide vital services to county residents. We also appreciate that the County Treasurer's Office is committed to working with low-income residents to collect property taxes rather than immediately resorting to tax foreclosures. For property taxes that have remained unpaid, property tax lien sales are one way for the County Treasurer to collect revenue. While the Treasurer has used this option a number of times in the past, such a sale has not been held since before the pandemic. Legal Aid and other community partners historically have had concerns about the impact of such sales on low-income homeowners, from the types of properties that were included to poor lines of communication between tax lien holders and homeowners after the sale. For this year's proposed property tax lien sale, the steps that the County Treasurer's Office has taken to exclude certain properties from the sale pool are encouraging, because they recognize the significant financial hardships that certain county residents are experiencing during times of rising costs and economic uncertainty. The Treasurer's plan to exclude from the sale properties with the homestead exemption, properties located in equity zones, and properties with a home value of less than $100,000, among others, will protect some of the most financially unstable households and help prevent further strain for families and communities. If the sale is approved, the buyer, NAR Ohio LLC, should maintain open lines of communication with county homeowners by having a dedicated phone number to speak with an NAR representative and a local mailing address. NAR should also issue consumer-friendly notices so that homeowners can understand their obligations. These actions will help provide a better process for county homeowners after the tax lien sale is complete. Thank you very much.
Very good.
Lou.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
Instead of telling you the same thing you have heard before, but even in a different way, let me follow that lady's thoughts. If we want to really fund something, which we should have done that 2 decades ago, why we left, for example, Legal Aid Society being insufficient, chronically insufficient funded. They provide lots of services. County jail offers services. But if 2 decades ago, from 2 decades ago, people did not think about the well-being of the inmates and the people working there, you have to wait after recession and COVID-19, when everything we are suffering from the inflation, supply chain issues, workforce shortage, when everything got way more expensive, now you want to even issue the bond to create a bigger new locations for people to think that you want to make the mass incarceration even bigger. On the other hand, not only the property tax is a burden for the low-income residents in the county, Think about that. You can actually help legal aid fund them properly so the right to counsel can cover the people as a senior with disability, but without kids in their household when they encounter housing issue, maybe as a renter, or even they are still paying mortgage. Why don't we do that? That is the way to keep the population or even increase the population of the county instead of thinking only about this jail under the political pressures. Please think twice and thrice. Last time, thanks to Mr. Gallagher asking good questions, numbers did not match. Please reject that.
Frank Ford.
Council President Miller and members of council, I'm here today to speak on behalf of the Vacant and Abandoned Property Action Council.
Mr. Ford, if you could state your name for the record, please.
That's a good idea. Frank Ford with the Vacant and Abandoned Property Action Council, which most people know as VAPAC. And I'm here to speak on behalf of the county's proposal to sell tax certificates to NAR, the same issue that legal aid representative was talking about. I'm aware the council has concerns about this, and you should have concerns about tax lien sales. The VAPAC group shares concerns. In fact, I believe there's no other organization in the state of Ohio that has been more outspoken and adamant about concerns about tax lien sales over the years. In 2012, we conducted a 3-year investigation of tax lien sales, tax certificate sales, I'm using the term interchangeably, in Cuyahoga County, and we published a 170-page report. Our report included 41 recommendations, and I'm happy to report that Cuyahoga County Fiscal Office and Prosecutor's Office, they've been meeting with VAPAC every month for the past 11 years to implement those recommendations. In my written testimony, which I believe you have, there are 2 charts that I'm going to refer to. I just can't show them to you, and if you don't have them, I'll just try to do my best. The first chart shows that the 20-year history of tax certificate sale buyers and their foreclosures on homeowners. Those foreclosures were well over 1,000 each year until 2015 when we published our report. And ever since then, they've been coming down dramatically. The second chart shows the number of tax delinquent residential parcels going back to 2010. They peaked at 35,000 just before we published our report. That number has come down dramatically every year, and it's now down to about 23,000. Do I actually have some time left? Well, it's a bonus. Okay. Well, I'll say that. So it may surprise some of you. You know, those of you who've seen me before know that I'm not shy about being critical of something that I see that's wrong. The VAPAC group has not been shy about being critical. When we see something that doesn't work in government, we're going to speak up about it. And we did dramatically in 2015 with this report. There were news reports, front page headlines. The county worked with us diligently and in good faith to adopt virtually all the recommendations we proposed. This is a really remarkable success story, and the results are in those charts that you can see. I think what makes this work is not just that the county treasurer and the prosecutor and the fiscal staff, not just that they've adopted these recommendations, but they've been meeting with us every month for the last 11 years, and they continue to meet with us. That kind of citizen interaction and citizen monitoring, I think, is what makes this work. And I better stop while I'm ahead, unless you have any questions for me.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you for all you've done for many years.
Thank you.
That concludes the public comment portion for today's meeting.
Thank you very much. And I would like to ask my colleagues' indulgence. If there's no objection, I would like to take some of the items out of the order that's printed on the agenda as we continue to work out some of the details regarding some of the legislation. So hearing no objection, we're going to start with Resolution 2026-0096, which is the tax lien sale.
Making an award, Resolution 2026-0096, making an award on requisition RQ 16302 and authorizing a tax certificate sale purchase agreement with NAR Ohio 1 LLC as purchaser and NAR Ohio LLC as servicer in the amount not to exceed $40 million for the sale of tax lien certificates effective upon signatures of all parties for 2 years.
For the record, Councilwoman Turner has joined us, and I would like to call up Treasurer Brad Cromes to make the presentation. And I would like you to start with that that we have a proposed substitute that's somewhat technical in nature. Could you explain the essence of what the substitute is?
Certainly. Thank you, President Miller, members of council. I think I can tackle that, and if I don't do a sufficient job, I know we have staff who can further explain. But you will notice there's some red lines from the original version of the legislation you received and what's before you today. That was to make clear a couple of things, that the $40 million amount contemplated was a maximum in any given sale, not a maximum for the whole agreement. So that was the first piece. Also, there's a demarcation of NAR Ohio 1 LLC and NAR Ohio LLC as purchaser and servicer. That was to delineate which of those entities within the agreement has which piece of the agreement. That's a technical legal correction, just to kind of reflect advice of counsel as we went through the drafting process on the contract itself. So I believe those are the main provisions that we adjusted. I don't have it in front of me, unfortunately, but yeah, thank you. All right, thank you very much. And then just the last piece of that in the caption, noting that we are making an award on a requisition and not not stipulating necessarily that it's revenue generating, which is clear on the face. So little scrivener's cleanup there.
Okay. Thank you very much. And does anyone have any questions about the proposed substitute? Hearing none, is there a motion to accept the substitute and make it the version before this committee?
So moved.
Second. It's been moved and seconded to accept the proposed substitute. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The substitute is accepted and is the version of the legislation that's before this committee.
Okay, thank you very much. So with that, I'll get into the presentation. I would just like to start by thanking Legal Aid and Frank Ford on behalf of VAPAC for coming forward today to present some testimony and to share some perspectives on the process. I think it's pretty clear from what they said and also what was submitted, I believe, in written testimony from the Land Bank, the Metro Parks, and former Treasurer Rokakis, that this process works best when it is a community-informed and driven process. We worked really hard to get to that place throughout the past couple of years, actually, which I think I'll demonstrate as we get through the presentation, but I did want to appreciate their time. That I am grateful to have the opportunity to work with these groups. I am just the last in a long line of treasurers who've taken this responsibility seriously, so I appreciate that. Getting into the presentation, this should look very similar to what you all have seen previously. This is built off of the presentation that we did last fall, but for the sake of making sure that we set the level again and make sure everyone's aware of what a tax lien sale is and why we would be doing one. The tax lien itself is the instrument that we place on a property when a property has certified tax delinquencies that enables us under law to collect those delinquent taxes. Taxes are not certified as delinquent until they are unpaid for a full collection cycle, which is roughly a year. So it's an important distinction as well. We're not certifying delinquencies immediately as soon as someone misses a payment. That process takes time to reach that status. A tax lien certificate, then, is a document that Ohio law authorizes us to sell to a bearer to collect outstanding delinquent taxes standing in the shoes of the county, along with fees and interest, and we'll get into that in just a moment. And then the tax lien sale itself is the process by which we sell those certificates, and they're authorized under ORC in the section cited there. So again, just to kind of set the table on what they are and what we're planning to do here. As was mentioned before, the county has sold tax lien certificates before. They were first authorized by state law in 1997, and the county held its first tax lien sale in 1998. The initial sales that the county conducted were auction style, wherein bidders could come in and bid down from the statutory maximum of 18% to a number that was then decided on. Our experience with that was rocky in that there's very little control over who it is that's doing bidding, who ends up winning the bid, which properties they're going to take, et cetera. So the county made a decision to move away from those and toward a negotiated sale model, which is also contemplated in the ORC around 2015. A negotiated sale is exactly what it sounds like. It's a contract between the county and a third party. The benefit of the negotiated sale model is it allows a little bit more parameters for the county to set out in advance in terms of saying, these are the properties that we're contemplating having a lien on. These are the sorts of things we're looking for from you as a servicer to provide to the county by way of service, to provide to our taxpayers by way of information and notices and service, et cetera. So that's why that decision was made. Again, as was noted earlier, the last of these lien sales was conducted in 2018, 2019, leading into the pandemic, and we have not had one since that time. So those last two sales, we sold roughly 2,000 parcels in total in, and of those parcels that were sold in 1819, only 31 remained unpaid and 16 were forfeited by the fall of 2023 when those certificates expired. So very high success rate, very low rate of actual foreclosure enforcement or the need to go to that end. So why are we contemplating restarting tax lien sales now? For one, there is significant revenue related to the collection work we do prior to a tax lien sale that is of value to us. Part of our process is that we do direct outreach to our taxpayers well in advance of a sale date. We have done this from the moment someone is certified, and basically they get a nice letter from me saying, hey, you're certified, there might be enforcement down the road, it would be a good idea to get on a payment plan. And that's kind of the first contact on that subject. We notify them a number of times throughout the course of the process, and then that ends with a 30-day notice of a pending sale. So that is to say, all of that communication generates a lot of folks getting in touch with us. And we found last fall when we were pursuing this process that we had roughly half of the folks that we contacted get in touch with us in some way, either to make a payment or get on a payment plan. So very successful revenue generation just from the conduct of the process itself. Secondarily, once we actually go to a sale, they help the county ensure that every taxpayer is paying their fair share. That includes out-of-market LLCs, and I know you all have heard a lot over time about the impact of out-of-area purchasers buying up properties within our market, the way that kind of degrades communities on occasion and can have negative spillover effects. This is a tool for us to go at and get some of those. Typically, these are holders that are holding them as a commercial status, either as an investment or as a rental property. This is a great tool for pursuing collections on folks in that status. The other thing is that doing a sale allows us to free up resources to do foreclosure work on other properties that may need a higher touch for whatever reason, or maybe in more of a delicate status, so that we can do closer outreach on that front. As our prosecutor mentioned, I think during the fall when we talked about this, their capacity for doing tax foreclosure work is somewhere between 2,000 and 2,500 cases a year. Our overall tax delinquent portfolio, I believe, as of the beginning of this past month, was something around 28,000 parcels. So there's a significant gap between our capacity to pursue cases and the body of cases that are pursuable. Tax lien sales roughly double our capacity in that space as well. Another thing that's valuable about them is that they are an early intervention. This is a way for us to get folks on the front end when they have a lower dollar delinquency, ideally, so that we are not at the place where we're doing a tax foreclosure sale, which has additional costs, and where the meter has continued to run over time. That means if someone ends up in the unfortunate circumstance where they are losing a property, and again, this is a diminishingly small part of the overall portfolio, that they're able to capture more equity on the front end in that case, as opposed to having it being eaten up by fees. Last 2 points, just very quickly, they produce immediate revenue for us to support schools, health levies, police and fire, road and bridges, all the critical services we all depend on every day. We know that we are in a diminishing resources environment, and this allows us to make sure that we're doing our part under our statutory mandate to do the collection work that we are required to do. And they give our, as a last point, a property owner who finds themselves in the position of having a lien certificate sold on their property. We require by contract and have for many years that those folks are offered the opportunity to get in a payment plan with the servicer. So again, extending more options for folks to catch up on whatever debt may exist there. We have some limitations under our policy for the payment plans that we'll offer. State law allows us to go up to 5 years. Our policy allows us to go up to 3 bites at the apple for residential properties, and generally for commercial properties as well, with a couple more caveats. This extends additional opportunities for payment plans. So our development process, again, this is not something that should be super new. We started having initial conversations internally with our office, the land bank, and the prosecutor's office in the spring of 2024. We then conducted stakeholder meetings in the summer of that year with VAPAC, the Greater Cleveland Reinvestment Coalition, other fair housing advocate bodies in our community, to start to shape the exclusions list, which we're going to talk a little bit more about here shortly, and make sure that we were keeping people who were in the most vulnerable populations out of this sale process, so that we can, again, engage with them on a higher touch capacity with some of our other delinquent tax outreach work. In the fall of '24, we sent initial letters to our taxpayers notifying them who were in the status that we might be pursuing a tax lien certificate sale in the future. And then we launched an informal RFP in the spring of '25, reviewed responses and selected a purchaser in the summer of '25, and came to you in the fall of '25 to have a conversation about that. As a result of that conversation, your feedback to us was that the process needed to be improved, and that we needed to do a little bit more to make sure that we were meeting all the mandates that are in traditional purchasing contexts, which we took to heart. So we worked very closely with the purchasing team, our business services manager, and others to conduct a formal RFP this winter. You'll see there we issued that formal RFP in early December of 2025, with responses due by mid-January. We developed a 14-member plan holders list based on prior sales, our prior points of contact, and then it was supplemented by additional membership from the National Tax Lien Association. So we tried to cast as wide a net as possible to solicit folks to participate in our process. We received 4 responses back from FIG, who was our prior purchaser, from NAR, from PV1 Capital, who previously did business under a separate line as Taxis Ohio, and then also from Tower Capital. So we put a committee together to review those responses in January, consisting of myself, our delinquent tax outreach administrator, Michael Sweeney, my tax administrator, Verla Jones, Yolanda Davis from the IT office, Victoria Berry in our outreach space. She's our public relations manager now. Assistant prosecutor Adam Judy, Matt Yorkovich from the land bank, and then we were supported by Dominique Tatum as business services manager and reporting secretary. So as a result of all of that process and the conversations we had, we were looking at a couple of things. One, what was the interest rate that these servicers, purchasers were contemplating charging taxpayers? 2, what sort of community outreach programming were they committed to doing for us to make sure that individual taxpayers were engaged meaningfully at the statutory amounts, but then also over and above that, and also that our community partners were engaged meaningfully in this process as well. And then also, at the end of the day, what sort of revenue generation or how much of the portfolio, given the parameters we put on it, were they willing to purchase? So as a result of that conversation, we once again selected NAR. They are, just to reiterate, a family-owned company that is based in Omaha, but they do have local offices in Cincinnati, and NAR Ohio has been operating in our community for some time in Ohio. They have 25 Ohio counties. I think that's up to date. It may be more than that at this point, a little higher. Including our peers as large counties in the state. What we liked about them in part was that they service their liens directly. They don't sell to third parties. They have a track record in these larger communities of engaging meaningfully with partners like legal aid and fair housing advocates. And that was ultimately the reason that we chose to select NAR. And if you'll indulge, I have with me today Dawn Hoosier from NAR Ohio. She's a director of government relations, and she'd like to offer a couple of words about their approach as well, if that would be appropriate, Mr. President.
Thank you. Please proceed.
Thank you, President Miller and council members. I appreciate the opportunity to come speak with you today. Again, my name is Dawn Hoosier, and I'm with NAR Ohio. I'm Managing Director of Business Development. Just to give you a little bit of information about myself, I'm an Ohio girl born and raised. I'm from Cincinnati. This is sort of my second career. I used to be a women's basketball coach at the University of Cincinnati back in the day. Go Bearcats, and I know OHIO around here is probably a little bit more appropriate. I come from a small community in Cincinnati, Norwood, Ohio, that basically was supported by the GM plant back in the day. My parents were working class people, not highly educated. Had COVID hit, they would not have been able to pay their property taxes. And so I grew up in a family environment where I understand how sensitive this topic can be. We would have struggled in those circumstances. And so when I chose to work for a company, that was something that was very important to me, was to look at how they operated their business and whether they were treating people in a fair and equitable manner. Taxes are sort of something that we all live with, but it doesn't mean that we can't treat people fairly and understand that circumstances sometimes get in the way of people being able to resolve things. With that said, we are a privately held company, as Brad had mentioned. I report directly to the owner of our company, and so we are able to make decisions on a one-off basis with property owners to ensure that we are being mindful of their circumstances individually versus managing a portfolio from the perspective of algorithms or profit margins. We approach it more from a relationship standpoint versus sort of a business model profitability standpoint. Our core values, we build our business based on core values of integrity, commitment to our relationships, and transparency in our process. We think those things are very important. We work with about 90% of the counties that conduct tax lien sales in the state of Ohio currently. That's about 28 counties. We currently work with only about 30 currently conduct sales. Some have more needs than others, but almost all of the larger counties need the revenue to support their communities. One of the things my mother always told me was, leave it better than you found it. And that's really how we approach our business as well, is we have an extreme focus on working with property owners in a responsible manner to try to help educate and determine the best resolution to resolve the circumstance. We also are focused on property stability. We have had multiple conversations with Frank Ford and VAPAC around this philosophy, and we are aligned greatly with them. We want to ensure that we, again, leave it better than we found it by working with property owners, as well as ensuring that we're not deteriorating values of properties in the communities. And it's very important to us that we protect both our reputation, but also the county's reputation and how we operate our business. We fully support the VAPAC and the county exclusions. We think they're integral to this process. We align very much like that. And as a matter of fact, when I work with other counties that have not conducted tax lien sales, these are the exact suggestions that I make to the county treasurers that we work with, that they remove properties in these categories to ensure that we're collecting taxes from people that have the ability to pay them and just are choosing not to. As a result, we have a very high percentage of redemptions. We see very few properties go to foreclosure, and if something does go into a foreclosure, we have not taken one property in the state of Ohio. We have never had a property in which it went to a foreclosure sale, and we in turn had to acquire that property through the process. So I think that speaks to itself. I don't believe any other company in this market could say that. And that's highly due to the fact that we engage with property owners. We do our best to make sure that we understand their circumstance and we work with them. The other thing that's really important to us is that we provide transparency to all the parties involved. So a property owner has the ability to contact our toll-free number. They have an online portal in which they can go in and see their accounts. They also can email us, as well as the flyer that they get from the treasurer's office has my personal cell number on it. They have access to the information they need at all times. The county as well has access to a treasurer's portal, as well as we will provide monthly and quarterly reports. And so it's very important to us that we provide transparency. And I want to take that a step further to say that in Hamilton County, which we work with them as well, legal aid has a login to our system, so they can also help property owners in a meaningful way where they don't feel like they're blind to the information that's needed. Lastly, I would say, something that's really near and dear to my heart is that we engage with the community. We work with legal aid. We actually have worked with them jointly to send out noticing to property owners to ensure that our messaging is clear and digestible, because many times this is an education process for people. And they simply don't understand how to navigate it. We work with community action. We try to really understand whether there are funds out there for people or resources, as well as with land banks and, of course, VAPAC. We understand that this decision is not just about revenue, it's about trust. And our goal is to represent Cuyahoga County in a way that reflects its values, protects its residents, and delivers a consistent result over time. Thank you so much for your time as well.
Councilman Kelly.
Thank you.
Step back.
So you had said that hadn't foreclosed, but there were properties that were purchased. Did I get that right? I was trying to keep up with you. So you said that it hadn't gone to foreclosures, but had there been property purchased? I didn't quite understand that.
Yes, sir. So thank you. I appreciate that question. So the information I meant to provide was that when we purchase a portfolio, generally what we see is about 76% of that portfolio will redeem prior to any legal action being taken. Another 24% tends to go into a foreclosure action. However, of that, we're only seeing 2% of that actually go into an actual sale of the property. And of that 2%, what we're seeing is that those are not homeowner occupied properties. Those are properties that have become vacant and abandoned. Those are properties that are commercial properties. And those are properties that are deteriorating or have some other encumbrances. Many times a bank is foreclosing on that property as well, or they're delinquent in other areas. And so we've seen a very high success rate in being able to work with property owners.
Thank you. You got ahead of me there, and I was going to ask what kind of percentages you had, and you answered all that. And being from Cincinnati, I was wondering how you were going to pronounce Ohio, because when we have our FOP conferences for the state, half the state says Ohio, and the other half says Ohio. So I found that interesting.
And which way to Cincinnati?
Ohio.
Ohio, all right,
Yeah,
well, I
yeah.
missed that.
So,
I tend to
excellent.
get mistaken for Kentucky versus Cincinnati a lot of times.
Northern Kentucky, right, yeah, okay. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir, thank you.
Through the chair, have you participated in Cuyahoga County before and with tax lien sales?
So, ma'am, I have not through NAR Ohio. I have, however, worked with another company, Taxis, when it was owned by a prior owner. I worked with them, and so I worked with Cuyahoga County at that time.
And roughly, through the chair, how many residents in Cuyahoga County successfully pay back their property tax debt through you or through your agency?
Through Taxis?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I don't think I could provide that information because I had left before they had fully serviced that portfolio.
Okay, but
My
people
apologies.
do successfully
Yes, ma'am. So,
navigate with you.
Yes, ma'am. So, yes, so about 76% we see redeemed prior to any litigation, about 98% overall successfully resolve the issue. And we work very hard to put people on payment plans to help them sort of to navigate and educate the process so they can redeem. If someone's engaged with us, they are not going to lose their property. We will make sure that we help them resolve it.
So when tax certificates are purchased, what are the impacts to the residents that can't pay under this agency? So is it you guys put it through foreclosure instead of us now?
Yes, ma'am. So that's a great question. So we follow the same statute that the treasurer does. And so we follow the same exact process. So we would have to file an action through the local courts. It's a judicial foreclosure. All the parties are notified. It would have to go, if no one paid at that time, it would have to go through 2 sales through an open outcry sale. And then the property would be sold through that process. And again, we only see about 2% of it go all the way through that process.
And one final question through the chair. So when they finish successfully with you, how does that property, does it come back to the county under our roles?
Yeah, so through the chair to the councilwoman, it's just, the distinction too is that they are purchasing a certificate for the delinquent taxes themselves. So the meter continues to run for
Us,
current taxes
okay.
with us. If they end up in a delinquent status with those current taxes, that may be offered as an additional certificate, which I'll speak about in just a moment. But as a rule, the obligation never strays from the county. It's just that this entity is standing in our shoes in these certain circumstances where we have sold a certificate.
Ms. Simon.
Thanks. I didn't know you had more to present. My question.
do. Yeah,
Why
I
don't
do.
you finish? And my question, I have 3 questions.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Thank you, Don. So I appreciate your indulgence. I'll go through the rest of this relatively quickly. Just to give you some highlights of the draft contract that we've negotiated at this point. It's a 2-year sales term. Our thought process being stability is a value, both for our operations as a county and also to our taxpayers. There are 2 different interest rate provisions here. As I'd mentioned, under state law, the statutory maximum is 18%. We have a negotiated rate for residential properties that are owner occupied of 6%, and for all other properties of 11%. So just again, for additional context, our last contract with FIG, it was a 12% interest rate across the board. So there's a substantial improvement for owner-occupant residents in particular, and a little bit overall. As I would note again, we are only selling tax liens at par, which is to say at their value. We're not selling them at a premium. We are also not selling discounted liens, which we think helps for stability purposes also. We are requiring payment plans. As Don mentioned before, there's no foreclosure action while there is a payment plan in place and being followed. And we do have requirements in the contract for dedicated local points of contact for mailing, for phone, et cetera. So I won't belabor that point any further other than to say we tried very carefully to make sure that the contract was as favorable to our residents as possible. And this next slide is probably a buried lead because we have referenced the exclusion list probably a dozen times without telling you what it is. So that's what this slide is, and I apologize for that. Again, through our conversations with VAPAC and others, we worked to exclude certain properties from inclusion in the tax lien sale. That list includes any parcel with a homestead exemption, so that would be low-income senior citizens, folks with disabilities, disabled veterans. We excluded owner occupants in equity zones, which I'll show you in just a moment as a refresher. We excluded owner occupant properties with values less than $100,000 and delinquencies less than $1,000. We excluded properties that are on a current delinquent tax contract, and we excluded properties that we have identified collaboratively with our partners as well as the prospective purchaser as being potentially owned by a nonprofit or some other community-centric organization. So we tried very carefully, again, to make sure that we were going after with this process to the extent possible those properties that need the most assistance in getting to a payment place. This is the equity zone map for frame of reference. This comes to us from the Department of Equity and Inclusion. It was created in 2022, and it was initially meant to encourage investment in historically disinvested parts of the county. It's based on the 1940 redlining map, which I'm sure you're all very familiar with. So it's that, and then it also includes areas where the population, 20% of the population or more is below the poverty line, life expectancy is less than the county median, and the median property value is less than the county median. So the map represents roughly 26% of the county's land area and 46% of the county's population. This is our most recent list of properties that we think are likely to be included. And of course, the caveat here is we have not yet begun earnest collection efforts on these in terms of relationship to the sale. So this number will decline over time as we reach out to folks. But as of right now, you can see the splits there. We have roughly 2,500 parcels with a delinquent tax amount of roughly $24 million that we are contemplating as of early next week. So these next maps are an attempt to sort of show you where these parcels are in the county. I know this is small. I'd be happy to send it to you separately. But this sort of demonstrates this is our 6% residential pool group. This is the 11% pool. And keep in mind, when I say residential, I mean owner-occupant. So this 11% group does include rentals. So that's, you kind of see where they are just visually. There's a greater concentration in that urban core with respect to sorry, I skipped too far ahead of myself. With respect to the 11% group, and you will see too, that tracks pretty closely again with our equity zones map. So just sort of to be clear visually about that, I hope I didn't flip through that too fast, but you can kind of see there are pretty bright lines with respect to the owner-occupant residence, which is what I was attempting to drive home there. So last bits here, proceeds from a prospective sale break out this way, 61% to schools, 22% to the county, 12% to our municipalities, and 5% to libraries. The upshot of that is that the county share of the $24 million would be roughly $5.3 million. The general revenue fund would be roughly $400,000. Roughly $2 million to the various HHS levies, and the balance distributed to other county-directed levies accordingly. So I'm happy to unpack that further if you'd like to, but that does conclude the actual presentation itself. Just the conclusory remark, we do want folks to get on a payment plan with us if at all possible. That is always our preference. So we continue to do this outreach work. I mentioned in a prior communication to you the tremendous work that Mike Sweeney and his team do on this. We are continuing to build those out. I'm going to Lakewood tonight for a tax talk. I've got staff who are regularly going out and having conversations. They'd be happy to do that in any of your districts at request, but it's those one-on-one interactions that we find really are moving the needle and helping people get on the right track and stay there. So with that, I'll stop and take questions.
Thank you very much, and we have Councilwoman Simon followed by Kelly.
Thank you so much I appreciate you going back out to bid with the formal process. I really appreciate that, and I think it makes a big difference, at least with perception. What is the time frame for the sale? We talked about certain windows of time being ideal for such a sale.
Yeah. So through the chair to the councilwoman, at this point, based on the council legislative calendar and our tax collection calendar, we would be targeting, provided we are approved at this meeting and then third reading, a sale date of around May 29th. That puts us a couple of weeks before we would be doing our traditional mailings for a second half tax collection, provided we get all the rates and everything we need from the state of Ohio to do those in a timely way. But this does fit within that window. It'll be tight, but our staff is preparing now.
Okay, thank you. And how do we know there won't be a tax lien sale by the third party? Is that in our contract? Is that just their policy? How do we know that?
So through the chair to the councilwoman, you're asking about like they're spinning off
Yes.
that's in the contract. It's
Okay,
prevented in the
good. Our
yeah.
contract. Perfect. I think that is it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilman Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just how many people filed their taxes on time and how many are in arrears at this point? Do you have a percentage?
Through the chair to the councilman, that is a good question that I was not anticipating you asking today. But as a percentage, we right around 8 to 10% tax delinquency, I think. I'd have to get, I'll research that and get you the actual number. But the total pool is what I mentioned before, that 28,000 parcels, and roughly, we're doing 24 million in the tax lien sale, roughly 40 million and change in total delinquency. I will get those numbers for you after the meeting, though.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate it.
Any other questions, Councilman Hauser?
To the chair, to the treasurer, I also want to thank the treasurer's office for waiting. I know we had a conversation. You guys wanted to do this last year, but people were in jeopardy of losing their SNAP benefits, and so we decided to wait. And so I also want to thank you guys for the work around the equity zones, the delinquencies less than $1,000, and parcels that are on the homestead exemption. I did have a question around legal aid. Is NAR already in conversation with legal aid? Because it wasn't clear to me from the representative, are these agreements already being made per our contract that you guys will have a direct line and everything else legal aid want it done? Is that in our contract?
Through the chair to the councilman, we did incorporate feedback from legal aid into the draft contract, as well as the prosecutor's recommendations from the last go-round. So those are reflected in the agreement as we've got it. I also know that Ms. Hoosier is in contact with legal aid staff and starting to build that network together.
And my last question, I think it was mentioned that in Hamilton County, legal aid had access to their dashboard. Will that also happen in Cuyahoga County?
Through the chair to the councilman, I don't think we've decided that yet, but I don't think they would have any objections to doing so. As I look at, yeah, she affirms that, so.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions? Councilman Sweeney.
Thank you, Mr. President. What's happening, Mr. Treasurer?
Councilman?
Thank you for who you are. I mean, you came in, you just want to do your job, and that's what you've been doing. You brought this up a while ago, and I want to give a shout out to our chairman. You two had a conversation, and we respected each other, and we moved forward and actually did some work that you just stated benefited, and it improved the process, right? Can you give me an example of a couple of the things that were improved by the extra work that you did through the chair?
Certainly, through the chair to the councilman. One of the things that I mentioned was the building of a more robust plan holders list. So we had an initial group that was based on prior bidders on our tax lien sales, as well as folks.
You just included more people.
Doing business. So we did more outreach. We also did a little bit more on the noticing side in terms of when sorry, I'm looking at my notes and trying to talk at the same time. That's not wise.
Yeah, I'm good.
Yeah, no, that's okay. So it was a process wherein we asked people to respond formally. So one of the warts with the prior process was that we allowed people to send us some information after the fact. So we reopened the process briefly. This one had a hard deadline. You know, we only had the 4 respondents. That's an example.
And through the chair, this is just a conversation. I'm not pushing it all.
Yeah.
It's with the 14 people that came aboard, what were some of the positives that came out of that brain trust? Or we just put them there together to make sure that we had everything, every aspect available to help drive this forward?
Yeah, through the chair to the councilman, that was more about casting a wide net. I was hoping that we were going to get a couple more respondents than we did. We ended up with 4, all of whom were known entities in the state for whatever reason. But we did feel like we had a sufficient pool of applicants to draw from. So
Perfect. And one more, Mr. Chairman. We have current co-workers that are working on the delinquent taxes. We're going to be moving a lot out. How's it going to impact our co-workers and their workflow?
Through the chair to the councilman, one of the values of this process is that it takes some things off of the plate that might otherwise have been handled by those folks. So it frees up time and energy for them to spend more time with people who need the higher touch. So for instance, if you are an owner occupant and you are in a place where the prosecutor is conducting a foreclosure, it gives us more resources to devote to making sure we route those people to resources to help them stay in their property if we can. The Financial Empowerment Center being an example, some of our payment plans, those sorts of things.
And through the chair, that's just an added benefit to this.
Absolutely, yes.
It's overworked and co-workers now can focus on the people that they come in scared. And then when you get your arm put around them, you're going to be okay. It's a huge burden off, and then the payment plan happens. And I believe the success rate is, the percentage is pretty good probably, right? Once they get on a payment plan and they're not pushed, they're not scared, and they agree to something that they can manage, and their life is back to normal. So I can commend you for that effort. That's just the added bonus for this, it's money and, cleaning out the inventory, but it's also helps our coworkers be able to do their job in the way that it's intended.
Yeah, thank you very much. Through the chair to the councilman, I do think that the ability that we now have under our policy to offer more payment plans, and the fact that we're being very conscientious about tying it to housing counseling services is moving the needle significantly for folks, and it's great to see that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Other questions or comments? Hearing none on an item of this level of community impact, we certainly want 3 readings. The treasurer has said that that's consistent with his target date of May 29th. Do I have a motion to refer this resolution to the full council for second reading?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
No.
We have 1 no. Schlepper. The resolution is recommended. And next, we're going to go on to Resolution 2026-0095. That's the revenue generating agreement with Euclid.
Resolution 2026-0095, authorizing a revenue-generating agreement with City of Euclid as per diem rate of $234 through December 31st, 2026, and then increasing to $257 through the remainder of the contract term for inmate housing services in the total anticipated amount of $1,900,000 for the period May 1st, 2026 through December 31st, 2027.
Good afternoon, council members. Donna Cleel, Sheriff's Finance Manager. I'm here to present the Euclid contract. I was told there's a lot of questions about how the per diem rate, how we come to the per diem rate for the inmates. So I'm here to answer any questions, but this is the contract. This is pretty much the same contract that every other city has, other than the city of Cleveland. Theirs is different. I was told there's some sort of an outlier, but this is the same contract that all the other cities have for us housing their inmates in our jail.
Any questions or comments?
Yes,
Ms. Simon?
thank you. So why are we differentiating between Euclid's contract and the city of Cleveland? Euclid, I know, has asked to have this rate reduced repeatedly. And I don't think my colleagues know the history of what happened at the Euclid jail. And tell me why we're doing this and whose decision is it to force them into a contract they really can't afford?
So, like I said, and again, the decisions to do this were not made by me. These decisions to increase these rates, I calculate the per diem rate. And when we started these contract negotiations last year, the per diem rate, which was in April of last year, was $234. So that's the number the law department, okay, that's what they said we're going to use for the next 2 years. So, but you're asking me why Cleveland gets a different rate. There's probably a lot of reasons, and I'm sure you've heard me say publicly, the Cleveland contract is not a good contract. We're stuck with that thing. That thing was negotiated at $99 per inmate per day, and it has no out clause, it has no term limit, it has nothing. I know that the administration was negotiating with them, and they got it up to the $143. But as for why Euclid's not getting that same price as Cleveland, again, that would probably be a question for our law department, because the law department and I believe the administration are who decided that we're going to go with the current per diem rate for all the other municipalities. I'm just here kind of trying to answer how I get to the per diem rate, but the decision to do it that way.
Yeah, I understand, Donna.
Okay.
So through the chair, I guess I need to speak to, I don't want this heard today. You know, I think there has to be a deeper dive in this. The background history on this jail is that the county had a contract with the city of Euclid under Armin Budish, and we took over their jail. We took it over. It was our county jail extension annex. We redid it. And then in the middle of COVID, the county pulled out and left the city of Euclid without anybody to operate the jail. They don't have a budget for the jail. They were stuck in a corner because of the county's withdrawal, without giving them any opportunity to be able to maintain it themselves. And it's left them in a very bad situation. They're not asking for a huge reduction in this, but they're asking for something they can live, especially based on the history of what happened here. It was pretty egregious, and I'm not going to blame anybody. It had to do with COVID, but we never went back in to come back in and run the jail. We just left them abandoned. And Euclid is the second largest user, maybe the third in the whole county. So they're suffering, and they're trying to bring inmate, they're not picking people up they should be picking up, and because our jail wasn't taking them, now they are with what I think just maybe some low-level offenders, but it's a problem. So I don't know if there's an opportunity for us to go into committee further on this and get into the weeds and bring the city in.
And you are correct, Euclid is the second largest user of the, outside of Cleveland, of the county jail.
Any other questions or comments? Councilman Sweeney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to comment, just keep up the good work. I know you just stay focused and take care of us, and I appreciate that.
Well, thank you.
So, the council person for the community who represents this community has requested that we not move forward on the legislation today. And if I hear no objections from my colleagues, I would recommend that we hold this legislation. Yes.
Just quickly, sir. This has been inequitable the whole time, and I don't understand. And it was we, the executive at that time, not this executive, went down a bad path. It's not Cleveland's fault, not anybody's fault, other than if you wanted to, we have to look in the mirror. But to charge different costs to different cities, for what reason, has never been explained. I think before it comes back, Mr. President, that the law department needs to bring all these communities in and explain to us and them why there's a difference, and other than cost. So if that could be accomplished, it'd be helpful. I just don't see how we can charge one city X and another city Y. I don't know what that's based on, regardless of usage. And then in the big picture, we need to start looking at getting out of these because we're not doing a very good job. And it's obviously hindering us in other areas. So I would agree with the councilwoman that maybe before we bring it to the to a committee, we sit down with the law department and the mayors and/or police chiefs and find out what their thoughts are. Thank you.
Ms. Conwell.
Through the chair to Donna, how are you getting to the per diem?
So the per diem rate is based on pretty much all jail costs. And what I do, and it ebbs and flows throughout the year. So like I was telling Councilwoman Simon, so it's the staffing, it's Metro Health, it's what we call other costs, which is their uniforms or their Crocs, things like that. It's the space maintenance, which is, for the water and utilities, things like that. It's all those things combined. And then we do it based on, so we take the average daily population for that month and we put it into days. So say the average daily population was 1,500 times 30 days. Then we take the total cost, divide it by those number of days, and that's how we get the per diem rate. And again, throughout the years, it ebbs and flows because that changes. The average daily population changes, costs change, things like that. Now, prior to COVID, when our average daily population was 2,000, 2,300, well, the costs were much lower because you were spreading costs amongst a whole bunch more people. Now it's higher because our ADP is around 1,500 to 1,600, and the costs have gone up. Wages, medical, I mean, there was a time our medical costs was 9 to 10 million a year. Now it's a lot more than that. So you got costs going up, average daily population coming down, so the per diem rate as a whole is going up. But I just take pretty much all jail costs, and then, like I said, we spread it across the average daily population, if that makes sense. And I can send you, I have my spreadsheets from 2020. I started doing this years ago when we started negotiating with the city of Cleveland. I was asked by Sheriff Reed to start seeing what the daily cost is for an inmate when the negotiations with Cleveland began that long ago.
The average daily rate is based on how many Euclid would send in, right?
So what we do is, it's not so much how many Euclid would say, it's how many people are in our jail altogether. So how many people, so like I said, the average daily population, maybe 1,500 or 1,600, and you take all those costs for that month, which is whatever it could be. I mean, it's in the millions. And then we spread it across, and we take that average daily population and put it into days. So 1,500 times 30 days in that month. Then we take those costs and divide it by the days, and that's how we get the per diem rate for the month. And then every month it changes, and then we come up with a final one at the end of the year, if that makes sense. And so that's what like I said, so the average daily the rate has changed over the years, and the current, now I will say this, right now everybody's paying the 173. That was what the final rate was at the end of '22. They got that rate when we did the 24-25 contract. That was a decision made by Bob Corey. Over 24 and 25, the actual rate, the per diem rate was 189 and 194. So they were kind of getting a deal then. But again, but now doing it now, the law department decided, no, we're not going to go with the previous. We want to go with what it is right now. So when we started this, we started it in April of last year, and the rate at that time was 234. But like I said, throughout the year, it did ebb and flow.
I have to just, through the chair, is this okay, colleague Conwell? It's not the law department's decision. I mean, we're acting like the law department makes decisions on budgets and on rates. That's not whose decision this is. I just want to be clear about that. It's not the law department who's determines a rate and negotiates a contract, and says that. So let's be clear.
I worked with Nate Hall.
I don't think it's you, Donna. I just think, here, we've got a lifeline.
Okay.
I just want to be clear about that. The law department's not making these decisions. They're just implementing them through the contracts.
Good afternoon, Brendan Doyle from the County Executive's Office. I hope I can provide a little bit of guidance regarding this issue. You are correct, Councilwoman. It's not the law department that is sort of is making the policy decision regarding which municipality gets which rate. And the rate itself is determined by Donna through her calculations. And the request was made by the city of Euclid that we potentially reduce their rate because they're the second highest user of the jail. And they are the second highest user of the jail. However, the distinction between Cleveland and Euclid is so great that we had difficulty being able to rationalize, being able to reduce Euclid's rate, even given the troubled history with Euclid, which we recognize, and which was prior to our time. But even with that, we had a hard time being able to reduce that. And I think just to show sort of the scale of the difference between Cleveland and the city of Euclid, in 2024, Cleveland's number of inmates in the jail was 6,377. Euclid, as the next highest, was 845.
I'm going to stop. We'll get into this in committee, but because they're not taking everybody who they want to bring in. And I understand the disparity in the numbers, but it's not for lack of trying. Euclid wants to be able to utilize their jail since we left them high and dry without their local jail. So I don't want to take up this. We have a lot of important stuff to talk about, but thank you for that clarification. And Mr. President, I'd love to get into the weeds in committee.
Understood.
So, as requested by Councilwoman Simon, we're going to hold this legislation for further discussion. Next on the agenda, we're going to move to ordinance number 02026-0001.
Ordinance 2026-0001, amending Chapter 703 of the Cuyahoga County Code entitled Justice Center Capital Projects Fund.
Somebody coming up,
Who-
Mr. President?
Who is going to present on behalf of the administration on this item?
I'm sorry, everybody. I was caught up in a conversation back there. Eric Janos, Chief of Staff. Obviously, we would ask for your support for this ordinance. We had robust conversation of this in a prior committee of the whole or committee meeting, and so we would ask for your support.
So I would share with my colleagues that as everybody knows, we have been in close communication with our judicial partners, and that there is a tentative agreement on improvements for the courthouse and other actions that will allow the jail project to move forward. And we have received communication that our judicial partners are comfortable with this legislation moving forward today. So I understand that there is a potential amendment.
There's a
Ms.
proposed
Conwell.
substitute. Go ahead.
Yes. Who has the proposed amendment?
The proposed amendment, Council President, the proposed amendment is on behalf of Councilmember Simon as well as Councilmember Conwell, and it's in front of you.
Okay. Ms. Simon, would you like to present the amendment?
Okay, sure. Thank you so much. After a lot of discussion at the committee meeting last time, as well as afterwards, we were able to come to a consensus, at least the two co-sponsors of this substitute, to remove two paragraphs, C and D, which what those two provisions were doing were to enlarge the scope of how this revenue could be used, C and D, and so the substitute is scratching those out. However, it's leaving B in there, which still opens this up for maintenance and operating costs, which is consistent with the testimony of the bond counsel that it's a general type bond that we need to have this flexibility. And this was a compromise to keep B in and remove C and D, number one. Number two, we added back in, and I think it was Councilman Gallagher who brought to our attention that at one point the language was and County Correction Center and courthouse, and then it went to and/or. Now it's back to and, because we as legislators anticipate that the money from the sales tax extension is going to be used for both and not to the exclusion of the other. So those are the three changes.
Are you making a motion to substitute?
I can. Okay, so moved.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion on the amendment? Hearing none, all those in favor of adopting the proposed substitute, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Okay. One nay from Kelly. The substitute is adopted. Is there any discussion on the question of recommending the ordinance as substituted. Ms. Simon?
Oh, I just, because we had a nay vote on the substitute, and just, I guess, wanted to understand why from Councilman Kelly.
So my statement on this is same thing basically as what we did last time, that I reluctantly voted to support the 1/4% sales tax. However, the proposal brought before us tonight, including amendments, does not carry the same intent as the legislation I originally introduced for the Justice Center Capital Projects Fund. Given these changes, and especially considering the uncertainty around the courts, which, with the press release we just got, looks like $150 million more here, I cannot support this new version of the legislation. So I think we should actually consider revisiting and even revoting on the original 1/4% sales tax proposal.
Understood. I don't disagree with that. And if my colleagues want to vote no on this, I totally understand. I'm actually on the fence with leaving B in, but this is a better version. It at least put some guardrails on the use of the funds, but really this could go toward, employee costs, overtime in the jail itself. So I understand that position. I think it's better to remove D, especially that open-ended provision. But this limits a bit, and I appreciate supporting this amendment, the substitute, and I frankly understand if there's no votes on this, and I'm on the fence.
Any other questions or comments? Councilman Gallagher?
Yeah. Regardless, I won't be able to support any vote on the way this is taxed to the voters. I understand the amendment, and it does make it better. So I don't want to be a fly in the ointment. I think everybody knows my position. I think I've been very clear. I'm very disappointed that we've gone this far. I would question anybody on this council. Do you really know everything that's going into this jail? I don't have to wait for an answer. You don't, because I don't. But we're going to borrow money to build something that we really don't know what's going in there. So good luck.
Mr. President, Councilman Sweeney.
Is this all the discussion we're having on this legislation before we move it to have a vote for second reading?
Yes.
Yes? And that was the presentation we heard after a robust, absolutely thorough, somewhat debated topic. We held it, and that's the presentation we got. Are we gonna, this is nuts. Absolutely. Governance is, we're having outside folks right now talking back and forth on the phone to try to say the judge is cool with it. They have the legislation now. Are the judges here? Are the judges really cool with it? This is not how we should govern. I could keep going. We have a press release. I have read a press release right now that I received, a joint press release, and I'll just read the one paragraph that irritates me. By aligning a long-term plan, we are making strategic investments that address immediate needs while avoiding more costly challenges in the future. What are the aligning long-term plans? I'd like to ask that question. Can I answer? Oh. That's just, that's where I'm at right now.
Mr. President, to Councilman Sweeney, absolutely. And the question I've had asked repeatedly is whether we could wait until the last council meeting in April to give us time to talk in more detail about this as well. And I think there's still time to do that, for them to go out to the bond market in June, I think was the plan. But I think we need the space to do that.
Through the chair, thanks. I'm not asking for time. We just got to get this under control. This is how we are governing. We have to do something because of the bonds and the timing and all that, but I don't like how this is all working at all. We made a decision, Mr. Chairman, over the weekend on investing $150 million for the short term of the Justice Center, and it was always, we can never do anything. And lickety-split is not good. But I'm okay, because you're my president, and these are our colleagues, and we have to make decisions to move forward. But in the future, better collaboration, more talking to get this, we have to right a ship together with the administration. And I'm choosing this moment in time to let my feelings be really known. So thank you.
So, just a little bit ago, we heard the presentation on the tax lien sale. And Treasurer Cromes could have said, well, you heard the detailed presentation in the fall, and we laid out all the background information, and I'm just going to add a few things and leave it at that. But he didn't do that. He came back and gave us essentially the full presentation so that we had the background and the history. The administration could have done something more like that on this. I would, basically what you did is you said, well, you heard the presentation a couple weeks ago as to the general rationale for this ordinance, so we're not going to repeat it. But I'm hearing that maybe it does need to be repeated, so
Mr. Chairman, yeah, I'm not saying that. I'm saying from the point, a lot of things happened from the point of last committee to now, and I've heard absolutely, I got a little bit from you, not much from my other colleagues. I got not much from the administration, a little bit from Trevor and Joe, and asked Mike one question. But that's a lot of stuff. I would like the judges to tell me that they're cool with it.
So, I would like to start by at least asking if somebody from the administration could give us a little bit of a redo on what the basic rationale for this legislation is, and to say a little bit, as much as can be said about this at this point, in terms of where we are in the negotiation process.
Council President Miller and council members, Bob Franz, county's financial advisor. I can speak to the 0.25% legislation if you would like.
Yes, that's what I would like.
Okay. As we talked about the last meeting, the amendments that we were proposing to the existing legislation were focused on three major points. One was to address federal tax concerns. One was to address bond rating concerns, and that's the item B that's been of discussion there, and also to protect the existing sales tax investors that have invested in the county's bonds. We make abundantly clear that we're not trying to alter that security arrangement at all that has been granted to them. So, those were the three main principles of why we were looking to amend the legislation. We're not looking to ask for anything other than some budget flexibility intent there, so that we can go to the rating agencies and get the best possible rating for the bonds. Best possible rating, lowest possible cost. That's the whole rationale on that.
And what is the rationale for passing the legislation out of committee tonight and passing it under suspension tonight at the council meeting, if any?
The Council President, it's a great question. The timing of a bond sale is a little, it's a little defined, is the nicest way I can put it. So we have to close the bond issue or any kind of financing to refinance the notes that we sold last year for the preliminary expenditures before it matures. So that's $41.5 million that we borrowed last year to fund preliminary expenditures and to get that going. Working backwards from June 4th, when that matures, we could close June 3rd, which would be the day before,
on the financing. And it's usually two to 3 weeks before that is when a financing would, quote unquote, price is what we call it, but sell to investors. That's when all the documents would be done, the tickets would be written, and then you work backwards from there. You need another week to market the issue, and you need about another week before that to actually have the bond rating discussions. So that would put us next week to have the bond rating discussions. So going into those discussions with this in hand is, in my professional and personal opinion on this, puts the county in the best possible position.
So your opinion is that it would be beneficial if this legislation is passed and approved prior to the meetings with the bond rating agencies next week?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Councilman Gallagher.
My comment earlier, Mr. President, was knowing or not knowing what's inside the jail. Is the $23 million add-on geothermal inside this jail now in this plan? It's a yes or no.
Can you come to the microphone, please?
Come on up, Uncle Jeff.
Uncle Jeff.
How come we get older and you just stay Uncle Jeff?
I don't have a public comment. Jeff Applebaum, Project Management Consultants. First of all, the value of geothermal is not 23, but the answer is it is in the project, and I'll go through that with you in just a few minutes when I speak.
Okay. My point being, I didn't know. I didn't know that cost, but I do know the testimony of the young lady that came in and told me that our return on investment probably won't even happen in 100 years. So that led me to question why we would even consider it. Is the shooting range, this is the sheriff's headquarters. They have sheriff deputies and they carry things on their hips called guns. And they have to qualify, I believe it's twice a year, so that's 1,000 qualifications a year. Is that shooting range on this plan?
There is a location on the plan where we could put the shooting range.
So that answers no.
But it's not currently in the plan, but it's not,
So my
it's
answer is,
possible.
so the
There's an
answer is
area
no.
for it.
So the answer is no.
The answer is no.
Yeah. And to my other colleagues here, we're cutting a $151 million deal. Nobody really knows. I mean, I'm comfortable. I believe the judges had come to that conclusion. But my point being, you're going to go out and borrow money for a facility. What's the programming cost overall? Is it more or less than what we have in the existing jail? I'm not asking you to explain that. I've asked that question. I really haven't gotten an answer. And I never really got an answer on the shooting range because they called that the Gallagher shooting range. And Jeff, let me give you a little inside baseball. I'm the bad guy up here. I'm the bad guy. You know, I got to go because I'm the bad guy. But every single thing I've said has come true. And we need to save money. So I propose a shooting range where we can actually make money. And that's not even considered, because Gallagher asked for it. No, the sheriff asked for it. But we're going to put 20 million or whatever it is, geothermal with a return on investment, 100 years, probably not, I believe was her exact words, probably not see any return on investment. I'll go to Mr. Sweeney. This is nuts. This is nuts. This is nuts. I understand we got to get going, but in October of 22, both executive candidates were put on notice. January 1, 2023, job one is your jail. We are 3 months, or 3 years, and now 4 months from that period of time, and I didn't see anybody putting their shoes on to run this marathon. But all of a sudden, now we're in a 100-meter dash. That's how mistakes are made. I get we have to do it. I get our backs are against the wall firmly. But I also heard from one of the original 0.25% people that passed this with 6 votes, 5 of only which sit up here, 2 of them have expressed concern. But we're going to go to the market with the public knowledge that those that voted for this have great concern. This is a wreck. I don't know where to go from here. I really don't. But I'm telling you now, and my predictions are pretty good, boondoggle. Boondoggle. And if the judges think that they're going to get 151 million out of the 9 whatever we're going to be borrowing, I pray for them. Thank you.
Mr. President,
Yes.
I just have to respond to Councilman Gallagher's speak on geothermal is no return on investment. Sometimes everything's not a ledger sheet. When the planet's on fire, and every year is the hottest in history, you know, we're on the verge of a disaster, and we have an opportunity to do something at a jail facility that's going to be there for 50 years, not to be emitting, you know, emissions that are going to cause further damage to the planet, but to humans ultimately. So you know, it's not we're not a ledger sheet, and you're going to hear from the presentation from Uncle Jeff that
I can live with that.
it's coming in much lower than anticipated. But I think my point, not everything is a ledger sheet, and we can't measure decision-making alone on, you know, numbers. It's people, and it's a planet, and it's species extinction that, you know, we're on a delicate web here. I just needed to say that to Cousin Gallagher.
Well, Mr. President, I don't disagree. Anything that makes sense that's going to save energy or emissions, that's fine. We're one of the poorest counties with one of the poorest cities, with one of the largest criminal activities due to the fact that people don't have any money. It's getting worse, and we're going to sink whatever it is into geothermal. I thought that just odd. And there's other things in the jail that I've just shut my mouth about that I think is very odd. We're treating this as though it's a prison. It's a county jail. We're providing services that are not going to be easily fulfilled to people that need them, unless, of course, they're shipped down to prison. So none of this has made sense. I wish it did. Maybe I'm confused. But I think when we're spending the people's money, we should treat it as our own, and we rarely do that. And there are serious questions, I believe, still hanging fire that should be answered, because I had heard 23 million testified to, and I had heard 20 million testified to. That's where I get those numbers. So I don't know. I don't know the cost. Shouldn't we know that before you go to the bond market in a week or two? I think so. That's all I'm saying.
Councilman Sweeney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Pronis, you do a great job. I am so glad that you represent us in this particular journey that we're on. I want to focus on the 0.25%, and the whole driving force behind this is the 0.25% has the possibility of causing us to have our bonds downgraded. Would that be accurate?
Councilman Sweeney, I think the restriction.
Yeah.
Is that what you're talking about? I believe so. I believe that is it's not going to be the silver bullet that solves everything, but I think
but I'm
this
just
helps.
Yeah. Do you have a percentage guess? I talked to somebody else. They said about 10% chance that this could affect it. Is that kind of, they're just an unknown? With all the other stuff, our debt, our rainy day fund, or this or that, all the grading that's going on, and then we have this restriction thing. What percentage would you give that could cause it? Other factors.
It's almost impossible to say, but, 10, 25%, somewhere.
Yeah, that's all I was looking for. I'm trying to balance this. And with the taking it off, the bonds are going to go out to market, and they're either going to be held stable, downgraded, or upgraded. Would that be accurate?
Those are the 3 options.
Yeah. And then and if it's off and they stay the same, would it be an impact if we put it back on? Because it didn't have an effect? Because that's the only reason we're taking it off is because of our concern for a downgrade.
Correct, yeah. So when you go to the market, you sell fixed rate bonds, it doesn't matter if, you pay the same until those bonds are refunded or redeemed. Whether or not the county credit in 20 years is the same or better, those bonds still pay the same, unless you're going to refund them or do a restructure or do other things. So it's, I think it's important to go into these discussions with the best possible, hand of cards as you can.
Yeah, I'm going to be a smart aleck here. Best or better, and this is best, which we tried. I want to give some credit to your coworker because she was very focused and she drove that home to me. So, but right now we're saying if it comes off, we can't, we can't be blamed for, oh my God, council left it on. Go out to the market, whatever comes. If it stays, if any action is one of the three actions are taken, putting it back on has no impact on our current stuff or our future stuff. Would that be accurate?
In the future, it could, but that would be the next, whatever the next transaction, whatever the next deal would be.
Then talk about that a little bit. Catastrophic, minor, in
As opposed
regards to impact?
To the impact? It's hard to say, given the uniqueness here, but it could be upwards of.
No, I'm just.
No, I know. I want to make sure I'm going to.
And you can get back to me on it.
I got it here somewhere. There it goes. So a one-notch downgrade, so going from where we are today to one notch lower. So we're going from a AA2 down to a AA3, that area. That'd be about, we're guessing about 7 to 10 basis points.
I'm not asking that question, though. My question is, through the chair, what impact if we put it back on? Not the dollar amount. We're going to go out to bonds again somewhere down the line, and our action of putting it back on, would that have an impact?
On future deals?
Yeah.
Perhaps. It depends on the
Yeah,
circumstances then, and it's impossible to say when that happens and what that impact.
Catastrophic or not much, or somewhere in the middle? You're great at not answering. That's all right.
That's a tough one I can't answer. I'm
Got
sorry.
it. Okay. I just wanted to set this up. Mr. Chairman, can I get someone from administration? I want to ask the same questions about the importance of is it only the bond stuff, or is there other things in the equation?
Yes, you may proceed.
Yes. Can I get somebody from the administration up?
Mr. Miller, I just have a quick question for.
Okay.
In your experience, in your career, have you ever seen restrictions being asked to be removed? And where can I go to see that? With the end result being basically what you're telling us. I've checked with finance people, I've checked with bond people. Nobody could seem to recall ever having been asked to remove restrictions.
I can't think of one off the top of my head, Councilman.
I don't think it exists.
And
Yet we're being asked to do it here.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, thank you, Chief, for coming up. We were just talking about the 1/4%. Is this the driving force, removing it so we get an opportunity to have the bonds in the best position to be accepted and sold and not downgraded?
Absolutely, yes. Those meetings are scheduled for next week with our financial advisor and members of the staff to talk with the bond rating agencies. And this, as Bob mentioned earlier, improves our argument for the best rating possible.
Yeah,
It is that reason.
Yeah, and that's the sole reason we're doing this.
Yes.
So if we have a successful bond sale and they're not downgraded, or any action happens, the position of the administration to put the restriction back on, what would that be?
Well, we hadn't discussed that. I would imagine that would have a consequence with the rating agencies because it would look, and with potentially with bond buyers, because that would look like we were selling it under selling bonds under one premise and then acting afterwards under another.
Yeah, I'm just trying to talk this through, because right now, taking it off improves our ability to position ourselves to go to the bond market. But it also gives a revenue stream of the administration. Can you tell us what your long-term goals are with if it stays off, with the 25 million that's going to go for 38 years? Can you talk about that?
I can't answer today exactly what we're going to do or how we're going to manage that, but we know we are going to have to continue to work on operational efficiencies and work within the budget we have.
And through the chair, so you have nothing planned, you never talked about in the next 38 years during this whole thing what you might do?
Councilmember, we've been working on focusing on trying to complete the jail project through the GMP and the bond issuance. That's what we've been focused on.
And I appreciate that, but we got to focus on a whole bunch of things as a county: short-term, mid-term, long-term, plans change, all working together. So I'm kind of baffled that we had a robust conversation last 2 weeks ago, and we stopped because time, and we didn't get through all our questions. And now we're here today, going to pass it with a lot of questions that are floating around. There's going to be a vote, and we'll see. It's 6-5 come out, and we'll see, because we didn't do. I'll just leave that alone. But I just wanted to hear what your thoughts are on it's the most important. The reason we're doing this is to position ourselves for the best opportunity to go out to the market. And I appreciate you letting me know that. And then if that's the case, we took it off, I'm going to continue the dialogue of, if it had no impact, talking about putting it back on. So thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be done for a while.
Okay. Other questions or comments?
Mr. President, I think we need to wait, vote on the substitute, which isn't ideal, but it's better. I don't think we voted on the substitute, but then to hold this until the end of the month.
So
to hear from the court, to get a comprehensive review.
So I have heard the possibility that our county prosecutor who's with us today might want to speak on this. Is that the case?
Who are you?
It's all about fiscal discipline. Michael O'Malley, your Cuyahoga County prosecutor. Whether this wording is in this legislation or not, it all comes down to everybody sitting up here, all of you. And you can spend money on whatever you want to spend money on. You know, when I was on city council, Yvonne, with your husband and Marty, you know, we had a very difficult financial challenge in the city of Cleveland. And Mayor Campbell laid off about 500 or 600 people, including 350 police officers, in one day, because she had to make a tough decision and keep the city fiscally sound. And you're all sitting up here right now, and whether that language is in this ordinance or not, it all comes down to everybody sitting up here, whether you want to have a fiscally sound county. You know, I read the piece on social media from Terry Coyne, and it was kind of troubling. And then I think about the fact that my office led the charge to get us COVID funds, right? Not COVID funds, the opioid funds, and I think we brought the county another $120 million. And I couldn't tell you where that went. But the county has had a lot of one-time money. And it all comes down to fiscal discipline, and it starts right here with this body. And so, like I said, whether that language is on this or not on this, you control the purses. And if you want to keep, if there's continuing to add more county departments or salaries continue to skyrocket, you're going to have fiscal problems. So whether, like I said, it all starts here and it ends here. And that language doesn't have to be on if everybody sitting in your seats decides that we want to have a fiscally sound Cuyahoga County. So it's up to you, whether it's there or not. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mr. President, thank you to the prosecutor. I think the language does matter because it at least evidences our legislative intent. I think that does matter, at least for the record, that some council people don't want this opened up to the, general fund, going to Disney World. I think what we intend should be reflected in this language.
Councilman Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. President. My question was to Prosecutor O'Malley. I can't blame him for going to sit back down again. So I'm not sure where we stand in all this. The cease and desist letter that we got said that we could be held personally liable, or however that was worded, throughout this for the illegal spending of funds. I don't know where all this mediation and stuff that's been going on, nobody has told me one way or the other. Are we still in that boat?
What I can say is I wasn't a part of any of the mediation, and I do believe it's been ongoing, and I hear that they have been moving in a favorable direction. That whole issue starts from the fact that my issue was consistent with the letter that then Council President Purnell Jones and Executive Ronayne, following the leadership of previous Executive Budish, we had a committee that met and was open to the public, and people saw the plans and understood what the expenditures may be, and it was an open process. And so we were fulfilling both the letter and the spirit of the revised code, in my opinion, given the fact that the city of Cleveland is 1/3 owner of the Courts Tower, and they're going to be required to pay some of this money at some point, if in fact that's the direction that we're going. So what Executive Budish had done was try to comply with the letter and the spirit of the revised code. Obviously, when the new executive came in, he issued a letter saying we're going to be getting the committee together, and he listed the people who was going to be on the committee, and that never happened. So I sit here as your county prosecutor, and I couldn't tell you a thing about, and not that I'm on the committee, but I certainly have a vested interest. I don't know what's going on in the new county jail. I've never seen it. I don't know anything about it. I didn't know till 2 weeks ago that there was bulldozers over out there clearing the site when it came up in a committee meeting here, which is what led to the letter. So I didn't know that there was construction starting, if that's what you term construction commencing, which is what the revised code says. I didn't know that there was bulldozers at the site until it came up in this meeting. So back to your question, my issue is the revised code says that improvements to a courthouse and jail need to go through these committees. They weren't gone through, and it also says you cannot spend funds, you cannot commence construction until plans are reviewed, designs are reviewed and approved by these committees, and that hadn't happened. So it was incumbent upon me, and it was my legal obligation to at least let you know that if that plans and those designs hadn't been approved by the committee, that everybody was in legal jeopardy.
Through the chair, has that been satisfied? Are we still in legal jeopardy?
I think the dilemma is, since none of the people of that second committee, well, quite frankly, even the first committee, which would be the council president, the executive, and whoever they agree, goes through it and approves it, and then the second committee approves it, which would be the two judges, the probate judge, a common pleas judge or his representative, the sheriff and the clerk. Until they meet and approve it, it would be extremely unwise to spend further money on the project. I think part of getting those, I would say part of the necessity of getting those votes in line so they can comply with the revised code is sitting down with the court and saying, hey, what is it that you need? We're going to try to work with you to give you what you need. And I think that, Pat, Councilman Kelly, I think that's what's been going on, is they've been trying to, they've come to the realization that it's a good idea to bring the court into the process now, and I think they've been doing that, and my understanding is it's leading to perhaps a resolution.
Okay, I guess my problem with this is that it's leading to it. We don't know if it's happened yet, and I'm not going to vote for anything that could put us personally liable until we know for a fact that it's been taken care of.
Mr. President, if I can go out of order a little bit to address Councilman Kelly and the prosecutor, I had asked the president to have an executive session for council members to sit down with our lawyer, the law department, to talk about personal liability. I think that's really important before we vote, what the implication is to each and every one of us. And I think it's important we do that before a vote. And we probably could do that today, or we could do it before the end of the month. I think that's important for us to hear it from our lawyer.
I appreciate that, Councilwoman, and I agree with you.
And the second piece of this is there's two separate things going on. There's that aspect from the prosecutor with the cease and desist letter about not forming the committee and whether it's required by the statute. But then we also have a second issue with the court, which is separate. The court has asserted itself to talk about its need for funding and how the Supreme Court would require us as a legislative body to fund the court so it can function and provide justice to the public. That's going on separately in a mediation. I think that's going well, but we do need to hear that result. And they're two separate issues. One is the court, one is the prosecutor's position on the committee. And I think we're in the middle of both of those things. And I think we need to be at least apprised of where we stand legally and whether we can be personally liable for any of this.
And again, in part of the dilemma that we face is, Councilman Kelly, when they agreed to pass this legislation 3 years ago, I think it was 3 years ago, put on that amendment requiring it to be for capital improvements. And I think it's important, and I know some council people have gone over to the Justice Center now and observed it and understand the need. But we've had garbage cans sitting under the atrium for like 20 years as the roof leaked. And besides Hopkins Airport, the Justice Center is the second most heavily visited government building in the county. Number one, Hopkins, number two, the Justice Center. And it's been neglected. And I think the judges made a valid statement as to why they had enough. I mean, because they see all these other things happening, and meanwhile, they got buckets in the atrium, and they have, I'm not even getting into the other stuff. They have other issues. And so they have a valid concern.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I would like to call upon Mike King and give us what information you can give us as to where we are.
Thank you, Council President. Michael King, Council staff. I just wanted to provide a procedural update because I know there have been a lot of late breaking news and moving parts in all of this. And I just provide a little bit of explanation as to where we are. So as has been reported, and as I think you've all been informed, the county administration and council staff at the request of the council president have been part of a mediation with the Court of Common Pleas. That mediation was at the request of the court. It's through the Ohio Supreme Court. The terms of that mediation are that those mediation discussions remain confidential until a resolution is found. The mediation took place principally last Friday. It has continued into this week. And as has been recently released by a joint statement of all of the parties, it appears that a tentative agreement has been reached as part of that remediation, or not remediation, mediation, and the details for that tentative agreement are still being ironed out and remain confidential. It is the intention, I believe, of all the parties that the terms of that agreement will be presented to council and in public as it relates to the final sort of outcome of all of this. Prior to any final decision, that would need to be approved by the council, the courts, and the administration. There may also be, depending on whether or not council members have questions about the legalities and the process as to how we got here, it may be warranted to have an executive session at some point to answer some of those questions. But as it relates to any final approval as to the jail, the courthouse, or any substantive issues moving forward financially, I understand that there's been a lot of late-breaking news. We can't go into those details just yet, but the hope is that we will be able to once some of those details are ironed out and the mediation is closed out.
So can you confirm that we conferred with the judicial representatives and that they are okay with our passing this legislation today?
We received word from the court administrator that the judge does not have any objection to proceeding with this particular ordinance for final passage tonight.
Thank you.
Mr. President, if I may add one final thing to the process, assuming there is an agreement that is brought forward to this council for consideration, we will also be bringing together that group that the council, that the county prosecutor specifically referenced for them to review the jail plans. So in the event that we can mediate and come to an agreement, we also plan to convene that group.
And am I correct that this ordinance itself does not spend money on the jail project and therefore should not involve any personal liability, even if that was there under some circumstances?
Mr. President, that's a legal question that I think we need to go into executive session to talk about personal liability with our lawyer. This isn't Chief of Staff's statement or Mike King publicly. I think we should have a closed session on what our exposure is and what defines commencement, because a prosecutor has a different position. Are we going to debate this law here? The prosecutor has a different position in his letter. When does commencement begin?
Okay, I'll withdraw the question. Eric, did you have a further comment? No, okay. So, my colleagues, our judicial partners are acting in good faith in negotiations. They've told us that they're okay with passing this ordinance today, which our financial advisor is telling us gives us the best prospects with the rating agencies in a situation where any downgrade makes a difference of millions of dollars. I understand the complexities of the situation and the uncertainties, and we don't always have all the information we want, and we don't always have all the time we want. But I think that moving forward on this legislation is the right thing to do, and I think that in the two-part process that the prosecutor described, we are the first part. Even if this were interpreted only as that it is action on the jail, which it isn't directly spending money on the jail, but even if we took that position, we would only be doing our first part in the process that's described by our taking action. So therefore, I'm going to make a motion to recommend ordinance 2026-0001 to the full council with recommendation for second reading suspension as substituted earlier today. Do I have a second? Is there any
Who seconded,
discussion
please?
on the motion?
Who seconded, please?
I'll second it. Yeah, I have discussion. Can I have our bond counsel come back up? Come on, Bob. It won't be too bad. Through the chair to our extraordinary bond counsel, tell me again, is there a drop-dead date that's the best for us to position ourselves for going out to have this? What date is the best to send it out? Or when we going there? Tell me the date.
The Councilman, you're talking about the date we're going to the market? Or the
Whatever
date
date that we have to do this by. We have to do it tonight because of what?
So I would suggest we do this, that you consider this tonight.
Because 2 weeks is later, too much.
Because 2 weeks is after the time that we are going to have the discussions with the rating agencies.
When is the rating agency day?
Next week. In a week. And going into that discussion with this, I think puts us in the best possible position.
Got it. Thank you. That's all I needed. And I just have the more discussion because it's really important, right? And thank you. It's really important that we have the opportunity to meet that deadline. I'm all into that. However, we have some unanswered questions because it's all in, almost here. We have the ability to meet anytime we want, Mr. President. That's a real thing. We can come off day, we can get 6 of us together, 11 of us together, and we can get this information because we may, Mr. Chairman, or Mr. President, add some value to the discussions of the agreement between the administration and the judges. If 6 more of us can show up tomorrow, the next day, or all 11, I'm not stalling, but I would really, I think we don't always have all the information, Mr. President, I know that. But this is right live and in front of us. And it's kind of close, so that's my discussion during the motion and second portion of it. There's a thought for you to ponder. I'm with you.
So my comment is that I know generally most council people would not welcome additional sessions, but these are special times and under the right circumstances, I have that in mind as a possible option.
Mr. President?
Who else has comments?
Councilman Castleberry, and then I want to follow up.
Thank you, Ms. Simon. Mr. President, I know this has been going on a long time with the people that have been here for a long time, so I don't want to speak for all the new colleagues, but myself, my comfort level's dropping as this meeting goes on with the unanswered questions, because we've only been here a short time, and there seems to be a little more discussion that needs to be had. And so I'm open for a special meeting if need be, because I think for my comfort level, I need to hear a few more answers. I'm happy to hear the judges are comfortable moving forward, but there's just a lot of open-ended things that I think for my comfort level, I'd prefer to continue the discussion, but I don't want to hold this up if this is that important with the issuing the bonds, but I would be willing to, personally, I'd be willing to meet again to make sure that I knew all the information, was comfortable making a vote.
Hauser.
Hauser.
To echo Councilman Castleberry, I cannot in good faith vote yes on a tentative agreement I found out about at noon that we can get no details about. And so, to Councilman Castleberry's point, if we can get more information, that'd be greatly appreciated.
So I would like to remind everybody that we're not voting on the sale of bonds for the jail. We're not going to vote on that today. We're not voting on the guaranteed maximum price contract. We're hopefully going to have a preview presentation. We're not voting on the bonds for the Justice Center improvements. The only thing we're talking about voting on is one piece of legislation to change the restrictions on the 0.25% sales tax, which our financial advisors tell us gives us the best chance when we go in next week with the discussions with rating agencies.
Mr. President,
Yes.
I understand that. I think everybody does. But my question is, and I've asked you this before, and maybe to Bob, about why does the meeting have to happen in June? Why are we at a meeting? What are these deadlines, and are they flexible? We seem to be up against this schedule that may or may not be able to change.
Well, Councilwoman, the schedule starts with the expiration of that note. So if we don't do anything, then.
The refinance. Are you talking about the refinance of the existing note?
Yes,
And when do we have to refinance that?
before it matures.
When is that date?
June 4th.
It's the 4th. Does that leave us room? Okay. That still leaves us some room. You have this meeting scheduled in New York. Is that right? Nothing?
No, just
No.
a meet, yeah.
It's what?
It's virtual or,
Oh, it's virtual, so you're not traveling. But
it does take time to schedule. And so if we reschedule, it could impact additional aspects of the financing schedule as well.
A lot can impact that. So I would explore, I think I impressed upon at least the president and you, and maybe it's worth looking into. And what about if we vote on this today and the guardrails are all the guardrails are put back in place and you go to that meeting with that scenario? The council doesn't support changing this ordinance and leaves it as it is, i.e. taking out B, and you go to that meeting on schedule, but council votes to keep it as it is and keep the guardrails in as originally intended. What, are we back to the best and better?
There's a couple questions to there. One is the federal tax issue as well.
Well, that's best and better, if I recall, the federal tax issue.
I'll let Catherine talk about that.
I'm Catherine Swartz. I'm bond counsel with Bricker, Graydon, Wyatt, and I was not here last week. Last time, my colleague Becky Princehorn was here, and I'm happy to chat. Just to go back to remind you about the discussion from a couple of weeks ago, the best was to have C and D, and better was to have B. There wasn't a discussion that I recall from watching the recording about taking out B. That taking out B has additional questions about whether that makes it look really like a pledge fund, so it's not that B is better. It's the best was we don't have better if we take B out. That's what I want to be clear.
So it's no longer a general bond obligation?
So then we're talking about yield restriction, most likely. We have to look, then we look at, it looks a lot like a pledge fund. Yes, we need a certification from the fiscal officer that it isn't. It is harder to defend without having B in, if you were to be audited and a number of other things. Most likely, there would be a significant look at, we'd have, of yield restricting the project fund, which then impacts significantly impacts the investment earnings and the financial picture that we were looking at.
Got it.
So,
Understood.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
with, ma'am, I appreciate your comments. When you mentioned taking out B, makes it more like a, what was the term?
Hedge fund.
Pledge, yeah,
and
so.
this is, yeah.
But if you take, so is that all portions of B? If you had maintenance, because the one that is sticking to me is the operating cost seems open-ended. Maintenance, we know what maintenance is. Operating expenses could go anywhere in a sense. So would that, if one of those terms was taken out, operating expenses, let's just go over a scenario, what would that look like if we said that we're going to use it for maintenance? Does that have the same effect as removing B altogether, or does it?
So I would need some more facts to do that tax analysis. What is the annual cost for maintenance? Does it vary from year to year? The IRS the concern of the IRS is that if you have a fund that is, that is completely supporting the payment of your debt service, then at that point in time, there's yield restriction that is involved. So you have to look at a couple of facts to sort of make an analysis as to whether one or the other. I don't have the dollars for how much is maintenance, how much is operating. It's a pretty detailed and layered analysis to come up with that.
Thank you.
Mr. President, just a comment. Thank you for bringing that up. That's a great question. In fact, before you were here, we started interlineating what maintenance would be, capital, what would define. We started defining that in committee, and maybe we need to go back to that question about maintenance. I love that, going back to that definitional and take out operation, if we can do that, and how that would impact the IRS audit. And whether we should define what maintenance would be. So
we had many conversations with our tax committee who do this all day, every day, and are looking at this, and that was not when looking at the amendments and what was proposed, the C and the D, at no point was the change of B considered, and was not something that we analyzed.
I mean, committee back when we passed this, not last 2 weeks ago. No, when we were going over this, we started talking about what would be a definition of maintenance items.
I meant the substitute that was proposed for this meeting.
Right,
Looked
I know.
at taking C and D out.
I gotcha.
Yeah, thanks.
So if we can, Mr. President, allow our bond counsel to look at the impact of, thank you, Councilman Castleberry, very much, with just maintenance in there, and if we define that, how that would impact the yield restrictions.
As we discussed before, more and more of this is shifting risk, While we can make we can make the call of whether you can, whether we can give a tax opinion, we make those analysis, but our tax advice was to have B, C, and D in as best. So you're going back, and back, you're shifting, you're taking on risk, at some point, it becomes a risk analysis of, at some point, I can't promise you, yes, you can support this if the IRS audit comes back. I mean, from year to year, it could change. You are assuming a risk there. And the risk could be that impacts the yield restriction piece, the risk, at some point when you deal with an IRS audit, it could be the tax exempt status of the bonds. So there's levels of risk as well. So, I mean, I don't think I can come back and say, you're good, this is, we've given you best, better, you're coming back several rungs from there. It's hard to say, where that is, and if it's, the different levels. Is that helpful?
Yeah, I totally understand that. Thank you.
So, I think it's time to vote on it. I'm not convinced that if we have a meeting on Friday or Monday ahead of next week, that we're going to have much more information on some of the key questions than we do now. There's risks either way. Our bond counsel is advising that this is the right and prudent thing to do. As Councilman Gallagher has told me many times, you got to listen to what your experts are telling you. So I'm going to vote for it, but it's up to the 11 of us.
Mr. President, if you call a vote, we had asked for a special meeting. I think we're all able to come to a special meeting. You know, we're not unable to do that with something as large in front of us as this is, probably one of the biggest projects we'll see in our lifetime. I think we're all willing to have a special meeting and take that time, but if you want to push this vote, it probably is, I would suggest, not a wise move, but I'm just one person of 11.
President, possibly if you took the suspension off of it so that it would give us time to have the meeting that Councilwoman Simon wants, maybe it would go through tonight. So we had time to look through all this or listen to our experts or see how all the agreements finally came together. But that's just my thought.
Mr. Chairman, I don't mind that for the sole reason of if we postpone it for a special meeting, we'd have to have reconvene this one and then have the meeting later on, the whole council meeting. So if we get no suspension, we can just call for a special council meeting and only have one. So that's just a point to ponder.
Mr. President.
Michael, may I have you for a moment?
And while Mike comes, Mr. President,
If we pass it tonight on second reading, not suspension, and then we hold a special meeting on, in a few days, ahead of next week, would it require suspension to pass the legislation, or would it, or could that meeting constitute the third reading?
I would defer to our law director on the final answer to that, but my understanding is that it could be a third reading, final passage, not under suspension of rules. That's my basic understanding, but we may need to refer back to the council rules to get a definitive answer on that.
I'm going to withdraw my motion. Are you willing to withdraw the second?
I'll withdraw it.
Well, I want to be clear. So if we're going to have a special meeting, I think some of us have other things to do. When is that timeline of that special meeting is going to be? Are the judges and everybody that they want to hear from, are they going to be able to come to that special meeting? So I think I would need a little bit more. Withdraw.
I'm going to restate what I said before. I don't think that we're going to be able to get some additional information, but not everything. And particularly about having the judges come here. I don't think that's going to happen.
Mr. President, I'm just looking for the details of the agreement, and that could come by our.
I want to be clear, Councilman Sweeney, who's going to provide that before we turn our lives upside down? Who's going to provide these answers to the questions that you guys still want to be answered? I mean, I don't have a problem either way.
Through the chair, I'm more than happy to be reported to by whatever document comes out to be. They're saying they don't have the details. We can't have them. They're embargoed. Once they're unembargoed, they're all going to share with us, and I'm going to take that as the information that's accurate.
And who can answer when will that be?
And people are saying we want a second meeting. we're going to have to be flexible. It's not going to perfectly fit everybody's schedule. We're going to consult with everybody and do our best. But I know some people are going to have to move some things around, maybe including me, and I'm willing to do that. But it's not easy to schedule a time on a couple days' notice that's going to be perfectly convenient for everybody.
If I may, Council President, as it relates to when the details will be able to be provided, unfortunately, we can't give you a definitive answer to that. I will say that the court and their attorneys have been very receptive to the time sensitivities of all of these, the mediation and all of these items. So we're hopeful to have something in the coming days and weeks so that those details can be presented soon. But where we are today, I couldn't give you a date certain.
Exactly, which goes to my point. We might not even get, so we're holding up a process, and believe me, we know the problems that we always face here on council because the administration, their timeline does not always include us, and to make sure that we feel okay or confident. And it's 11 of us with 11 different ideas, so or thoughts. So we need that time frame. So now we're faced. What I'm hearing is faced to June 4th. The week matters, so we would definitely have to have. We've heard from bond counsel and we've heard from Mike that we'd have to have that meeting this week in order not to mess up the meeting with the bond rating agency. So are we willing to risk that? And we're still not going to get the information. So, I mean,
the
from the
date,
ones that have the
Councilwoman?
questions.
What is when can we meet as a special meeting? Does it have to be this week or Monday or Tuesday?
So a special meeting can be scheduled at any time with proper notice.
No,
I think
I don't mean procedurally. I mean as it relates to this bond
My
meeting. I need to know when, I'm sorry, and then I'm going to yield back to Councilwoman Conwell, but I think I need to know when we can have a special meeting and safeguard the time frame that Bob France spoke of.
My understanding, and Bob can weigh in, is that the meeting with the rating agencies is scheduled for April 21st. Is that correct?
So
Correct. Tuesday.
Next Tuesday.
we have to
So-
meet by Monday. Okay,
We could meet on Friday or we could meet on Monday.
okay. Monday.
There's a lot of things going on that would have to be moved around. So I'm just
I can meet
making
Monday
sure
afternoon.
before we do all that and jump through all the hoops, did anybody hear what Mike King said? I mean, because some of the questions want to hear the judicial's point of view. And the judicial's point of view, their lawyers have stated that until they finish that, you're not going to get those questions provided anyway. So I just want people to think about, is that something that can possibly happen before Tuesday? I don't know. And then what other questions did you want answered?
The legal question, Councilwoman, about personal liability, I think is really important for us to have a comfort level of what, if anything, what merit that has. It's contested. I think that's
So that's one.
really important that we understand that before we all put ourselves out there.
So that's one. So
I agree, Mr. President. I agree with Councilwoman Simon about the legalities and also maybe some clarification on where this could go with outside of maintenance costs and operating, because I think it's just too open-ended for me on that one. So I would like some more information on that.
And mine, if I may, Mr. President, it's just this embargo thing. Can we join the embargo? Because we are kind of a legislative branch that is part of privilege, right? We should be part of that. But if it's between those two, and when you said weeks, that just gave me a great pause. My hope is that we'll have the understanding of a negotiated agreement that was caused by the discussions of this piece of legislation prior to the opportunity that we get together again.
Okay.
So
Do you
that-
wish to withdraw your second?
Mr. President, I just want to be clear. Are we going to be able to have all those individuals that will provide our 3 council members?
The answer is no. I think we're going to be able to get some things, but not others.
Okay, but I mean, who are we going to hear from Who's gonna sit in regards to the liability? I wanna know who. Is it gonna be McClure?
I think-
Okay, so he's good. Who's gonna talk about the maintenance? Is that still gonna come from the law department? And who's gonna address the, between operations and maintenance?
Law Director, Manor Office.
All right, I withdraw.
Okay. So
I'm not wasting time.
I'm now going to make a motion that we refer ordinance 2026-001 to the full council for second reading, not suspension. Is
Second.
there a second?
Second by Sweeney.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? The motion is carried and it's referred to the full council. Okay. We're not going to act on the bond legislation anyway, so I'm just going to hold that, and I'm going to use the remaining time to hear the initial presentation on the GMP.
No, you didn't vote.
Just second reading, yeah. Would be the third reading, yes.
12. Does that count?
That's what he's doing. First, you'll introduce yourself again, and then we'll.
Please proceed, we don't have much time.
Can you make sure your microphone is on? And please stop turning it off, everyone.
Good afternoon, Jeff Applebaum, Project Management Consultants. I'm going to, because of the time constraints, I'm going to go through some of this in more of a summary fashion than I might have. You can certainly ask questions, but I'm mindful of getting through this in time. So what I'm going to do, okay. So very quickly, and once again, I'm going to do this as quickly as I can, very quick process. I'm going to skip a little bit over design, but you'll understand why. I'm going to get to the GMP amendment, next steps, and then we'll have a bit of information on the operational review. Process overview, this is the same slide that you've seen on many occasions. I just want to point out where we are. And we are at that point right now where we are at the point of having a guaranteed maximum price for this project and presenting a resolution for that. And I believe you have the substitute resolution in your package. There's been a change in some numbers that you'll see, which is going to be consistent with the presentation that I now give to you. I do want to point out on this process, and this is, for me, this is a very big day because this process, that program selection, that was 7 years ago. I mean, this whole process has been 7 years in the making. And this is the critical point that we have now reached. Hundreds of people have been involved in getting to this point. And timing is critical right now because we have a very good news story if we can proceed and go forward. But what you'll see on that is that the check marks in that box, GMP and early work, our GMP pricing and reconciliation is done. You're obviously starting the bond sale process. We have the early construction packages that were authorized, as you know. And this is the point of GMP approval. So once again, just a reminder, the critical team here, you have the owner's team and the individuals here, Nicole, Laurel, Philip, Russ, and Rich, PMC, your owner's rep, me, along with Ellis Katz and Chris Panicki, and the Gilbane team have worked extremely hard over the last many weeks and months getting to this point on the GMP. And the effort has really been outstanding to get there. I want to make a comment, and I wish Mr. Gallagher was here, and I do see the prosecutor here. There's this question that has been repeatedly asked about, we don't know what's in the scope of work. Here is a statement, and I want to make this very clear. The program for this project, which was initially approved by the steering committee, the whole program was presented, the whole program document approved by the steering committee. The program document, it was revised, as you recall, when we went to 1,904 beds. Originally it was 1,600. That program was presented a long time ago to this council for an approval of the program. And while there's been some slight modifications in the bed count from 1904 to 1886, and that's simply a question of the size of the units, I'm going to tell you that the design of what we are looking at right now is exactly what is in that program. There's been nothing added, there's nothing different, with two exceptions. One exception is the geothermal that you've heard about, and the other exception is something called ground underfoot, which is an area outside which was not in the original program. The cost of it right now, because it's minimalistic, is about $500,000. That's it. Everything else in this jail is exactly what was in the program. The revised program that was approved, it was approved by the steering committee on which Mr. Gallagher and the prosecutor sat. It was approved by this council. There's nothing else in there other than the refined details of that exact same program. Nothing else. Everything else has been eliminated except for that. Even the demonstration kitchen, which people talk about, was in the original program. So this idea that there's stuff in here that people don't know about is simply not correct. It is the same program that we've been using, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a minute. Now, I was going to have Nicole come up here once again and review these slides, which show the layout that you've seen before, which show the building from different images on the outside, which show these typical spaces that you've seen before. And we can come back and do that, but given the time constraint right now with getting through the rest of this, I'm going to skip that. We can come back through, and if there's any questions about what is in this jail, what we have designed to, we can answer those questions. But I'm here to tell you, it is the same thing you have heard and seen over and over again, and it is exactly the same program with those two exceptions that has been approved by the steering committee and was approved by this group some time ago. A lot of time has passed. There's a lot of detail in how it's done, but it's the same program. So I now want to talk about the GMP amendment itself, okay? Now, this is an important slide in terms of the development of where we have been. You may recall that, well, some of you will recall, because I appeared before the Public Safety Committee on February 4th of 2025. At that point in time, we had completed conceptual phase 1, which is taking that program and creating the initial conceptual phase drawings to match the program. And I announced a budget at that point in time of $899,671,000. And that was in your February 4th, 2025 meeting. And presented at that time to the Safety Committee. I came back again and had another presentation at the Safety Committee on June 3rd, 2025. By this point in time, we had the first phase of the conceptual drawings, and this is simply taking and adding the detail to the program that we already had. We had the second phase. We were midway through it on June 3rd, 2025. Fighting to stay within budget, because one interesting thing that happened is right after February 4, we had a new president who had some ideas about tariffs, and we started to have all this tariff pressure, so we had to work really, really hard to figure out ways to, from a constructability point of view, a materials point of view, accomplish the same thing but stay in budget. At that point in time, we were at $890,260,460, virtually identical, within a fraction of where we were a few months before that. On January 13 of this year, I came before the Committee of the Whole. And you'll recall that meeting. We were now done with the conceptual phase 2, basically had completed design development, which is that next iteration of design detail. At that point in time, I told you three things. I said we were still working toward that initial budget of $890, $260, $460, but at that point in time, we had added geothermal. And you'll recall at that point in time, we said that from a budget point of view, we're putting that in at $20 million. That took our number up to $910,260,000. Now that, once again, this is all costs. This is the guaranteed maximum price that the design builder gives us and our owner costs of the things that we have to purchase in addition to that. But it was $910,260,000. I also told you at that time that we were not at that number because of our, we still had overages that we had to deal with, but I did say that we were within 1.5% of that number. Now, from January till now, things have, numbers come in, things go up, things go down. We have, we continue to have issues with tariffs and everything else. Working very hard with the team to figure out what can we do to manage costs, because we still want to respect that budget. So here's what I'm going to tell you. Here's what the hard work has done between then and now. That the base amount now within that 910 is the GMP. That's the amount that Gilbane, its team, guarantees. We are actually able to reduce that by $4 million. Our target was $4 million. We got to our target of $4 million, and we were able to do that through very comprehensive and effective value engineering, various things. Does not affect the quality of the building, does not affect the usefulness of the building, it does not affect what you see. And I can give you examples. You would never know the difference, but there are ways that we were able to reduce costs by the amount of $4 million, which is why today, and that still could come down. It's not going to go up, but as of today, that's why we actually have before you a proposal for a guaranteed maximum price of $802, $314, $787, because that's what Gilbane agrees to guarantee the scope right now. Now, we still have some other VE value engineering things we could do, but right now that is the absolute guarantee. Moreover, we were able to reduce our budget by $12 million. Why were we able to do that? Because as we walk through the GMP, there's various risks and issues that we had to absorb, that we were able to successfully deal with. Either having Gilbane take those risks, being able to figure out from an insurance point of view what we could do, or understanding, because built in the design build agreement is you may recall that we have a contractor's contingency. It gets reduced over time. Because we took those 2 extra months to get to this point, which saved us $7.5 million in financing, we were also able to tighten this up and give us more assurance that our risk profile could absorb this. So we were able to hit our target, and we were able to reduce our budget and the contingency budget by $16 million, a big portion of which will be replenished, by the way, by reduction of the design build contingency. But that now gives us, at this point in time, with the approval of this GMP, a revised budget that is no longer 910, but it is 894,260, a savings of $16 million from where we were. And frankly, you know, a lot of tremendous work. But I have to tell you, this is a lot of things coming together. We have a lot of contractors out there that are holding their price. You know, there are large competing projects. That price gets held for a very short time, and it's all dependent on executing this GMP. If we cannot do this, and you may recall, we stretched this 2 months to get to a better position, to have the definition and save some money. And that allowed us to save that money. But we cannot stretch it any farther. If we cannot execute this GMP, we are going to lose out on a lot of the ability to maintain this. And those costs will pop way back up. And I've told you about this repeatedly. This is a critical time. It's all about timing. It's like a piece of music that comes to a, you know, a crescendo. We're there. It's critical. So let me go on. So broken out, and this is just, you saw this graphic before. This is just the 894, 260 broken out. This is what's in the design builder costs, the GMP. This is what's in the county costs. And we can talk more about that in detail, but I'm mindful of the time, so I'm rushing through this, unfortunately. People before me talk too slowly, so I'm trying to get through this quickly. So this is one slide. I just want to point out all of the protections and all of the reasons why this is a tremendous GMP, because we have all these protections built into this process. And just to name a few, because it's design build, we have a single point of responsibility. Gilbane's responsible for both the construction and the remaining design, because they do it with their working drawings architect. And that means that we don't get caught in the middle of the disputes between the quality of the drawings versus construction, a critical advantage. We have a guaranteed maximum price, and Gilbane takes the risk for cost overruns unless we cause the cost overruns, like if we ask for additional scope, which we do not intend to do, but they take that risk. The cost savings are returned. This is all open book pricing. We see every dollar that is spent. We get to verify it. And if there's any dollars that aren't spent at the end of the day, if they don't use their contingency, that all reverts back to the county. They get a fee of 3.95%, which was a hotly negotiated fee. There's and some other pricing items, but it is all open book, all guaranteed. And we have our own separate contingency. Even though we reduced it, we still have the contingency we feel we need to avoid cost overruns on this project. If the project is delayed by Gilbane, there are liquidated damages. We're protected, and they're incentivized to get the project done. We have a very comprehensive risk management and bonding program. There's a performance and payment bond for the full amount. There's what's called subcontractor default insurance to protect against subcontractor defaults. We have every kind of insurance that you can imagine that you put into place for a project like this. We have. It's a Cadillac insurance program because it has to protect you, has to protect the taxpayers of the county. We not only have the full panoply of general and special warranties, which is important to guarantee this work, but those warranties do not end if there are latent defects. This is an important negotiation, so it even goes beyond the warranty period if a latent defect shows up sometime in the future. We have controlled this process in terms of subcontractor pricing. Even though we have a guarantee from Gilbane, keep in mind that they were required to go out for every trade contract and get at least 3 competitive bids or proposals. The project is not yet completely bid out. That's why it's a guarantee. But we expect to be 90% bought out in sometime in mid-May. That's how quickly this is going, because it has to, because we're competing against other projects. And we have direct enforcement rights against subcontractors. We won't need them because we depend upon Gilbane, but if we want them, we have them. There are other protections that are built in. Once again, these are just some of the key points. I will tell you that the GMP amendment document is this thick. It's over 100 pages. There's a lot of stuff in there, and that is because there's references to hundreds of other pages. If you really print it all out, it's a massive document. It's been worked on. It's the kind of protection we need for this. Next steps. And I do want to point this out because you've been talking about the timing of the bonds. Well, the timing of the bonds plays into the timing of the GMP. Because the GMP, keep in mind, the deal is Gilbane agrees to sign on the bottom line if there is proof of financing funding in the bank, because they have to lock in all of their subcontractors, they lock in themselves. They don't lock that in unless the money is there. And quite honestly, you can't really issue the bonds with any confidence unless you know the GMP is there. They depend on each other. That's why you time them at the same time. But that's also why we can't really, I have to say, we cannot delay this process without taking a tremendous amount of risk. That's the timing of this. And we did push it off two months. So that's all about the timing of this. But you saw on this chart, you saw the bond closing, how that was supposed to work. It does work in conjunction with the GMP. So the thought here is the first reading of this resolution is tonight, but passage on third reading would be basically May 12th. It's the week of May 11th. I think it's May 12th would be the date. That's the critical date where we have to have this done and have to have the confidence to move forward. Keeping in mind that what happens is that the money, you know, hopefully is there on, I can't remember if it's June 3rd or June 4th, but that is then what guarantees and assures the contract. And by the way, there's very large expenditures that happen immediately after that, including we have to prepay for part of the insurance program. There's a lot of stuff that happens very quickly. I'm not going to bother with the rest of the construction schedule. You've seen this before, but you can look at this in these events. I will tell you that is, now once again, you can, you know, talk about commencement. We have not done anything to start to build the jail itself, but we are getting ready. I mean, we have equipment mobilized at the site, ready to go. You know, we had those preliminary enabling packages. But as soon as we start to commence, immediately you will see mobilization for deep foundations. You'll see underground site utility mobilization. You'll see shallow foundation mobilization. And this project will hit the ground running, and it has to, because that's the way that we maintain this price. That's the way we maintain the guarantee. That's the way we maintain the schedule. Operational study. We have,
I'll speak quick.
be as quick as I was.
Nicole English, Public Works. This is a piece that I know several of you have asked about. We had been working on it for the last 6 months or so, and so we did want to present this. We presented this to a small group of, I believe, Councilman Gallagher and Councilman Miller, maybe a month or two ago. And so just to give you a quick update, the Sheriff's Department had hired Karen Albert from Practical Solutions for Public Safety to do a current operational study of their current facility. And so with that, she had a lot of information. She had already interviewed people. She understood our processes. So we amended that in order to do an operational study of the future facility, so we could understand operational costs, which people have been asking about and really were owed some answers on. So they worked through a list of positions, and between A.W. Christopher and Lieutenant Janke worked very closely with Karen on this process, where they looked at what staff they needed, how many they needed. They looked at current hourly rates and salaries, and then fringes that we worked with OBM to determine, and really coming up with what the total cost to operate the new facility based on the design of the new facility. Obviously, once you get in, things could adjust a little bit. This is our best guess based on the current design. So the bottom line is, with benefits, about $77.7 million per year to operate the facility. So that includes both COs, admin at the jail, any employees employed by the county. So not necessarily contract staff. You'll see, you know, medical is still outside of this. So this shows you a comparison where we took a look at the 2025 actuals that were spent on personnel We're showing you corrections officers just because it's a bulk of the amount, so we've called them out separate because that's where a lot of focus has been on where we stand on correction officer counts and then total staff. So the difference there is just other staff outside of corrections officers. You see they ended 2025 actual around 93 million. This includes overtime costs. 2026 budget is around 90 million, showing the staffing count there above it. The current study recommended COs at 671 with a total staff count of 826, and the budget goes down at 83. The key piece to that is really increasing the use of COs and other managerial staff to accommodate try to drive down the overtime with the more staff, similar to what you've talked about this week, Councilman Gallagher. And so that's where you get a lower cost on the personnel. So then looking into the future, we need even less COs because we have efficiencies such as we have less housing units, we have one main control room instead of multiple on every floor. So we actually need less COs to run the future facility than we do today. And then the total staff count is 772. We go down even lower to a $77 million cost per year. And that's really by using the relief factor where you increase your staffing in order to predict, make call off sick time and fill in the gaps that way.
Can I ask a quick question, Council
Yes.
President, to Nicole English, about the staffing reduction? Did you contemplate what it's going to take to transport?
Yes.
Yes?
So that's transport was
adding-
built into the model that we showed you.
Are we adding
Yes.
employees to transport?
Yes.
Okay.
So those increases do handle, I think, this next slide might
sorry,
talk about that.
okay.
No, I
Oh, I
forgot it
see.
was there.
Transport
But
group.
yeah, so we'll look at, we use a relief factor to drive down overtime costs at all levels. So even though we have less COs than today, we do increase for transport group, we increase supervisors, and also the use of caseworkers that were recommended in order to really handle kind of more of the social work and needs that are in the jail. We have looked at increased medical costs. I know that people have asked about that. We're estimating about 2.5 million per year increase in medical costs due to the increased services we are going to have on site. So that's that new infirmary that we're building, the behavioral care center, and the on-site dialysis. So we have factored that in. So when you take, if we're going to compare the 2026 budget to the future study, we save 12.5 million, we add 2.5 in medical, so a net of about $10 million of savings for operations between today's budget and the future operations. So I know I ran through that very quickly. Happy to have anyone ask any questions, or we can follow up at another meeting if you want more detail.
President, just one question. On the dialysis and the infirmary, will that also cut down on the transport of those going out to the hospital or wherever we decide?
Yes, anticipated, yes. We also have physical therapy built in on-site into the clinic, which sometimes that's getting transported as well. That would stay on-site as well.
Are these, through the chair, are these some of the things that you have determined are the most need that we're using now?
Yes, so that's how we worked through with the jail team and the medical team on what are some of the items you're sending people out for that we could accommodate on site. We don't want anyone to think we're never going to send anyone to the hospital because we are still going to have people going to the hospital. But are there groups of people that we could treat in the facility that we send out today? And that's what we've looked at here.
And as, one more question, does this include a doctor on site?
That's still in the medical costs, so since that wouldn't be an employee of the county, that's in what would be the Metro contract today.
That hasn't been determined yet, then?
That is outside of this part of the study.
Gotcha.
Anything else, Councilman Gallagher?
Nicole, my concern, the operational, that I get that, and we were going to save on bodies. We knew that from the beginning.
Yep.
It's the programming I'm concerned with. So if you can get me what's in the building now, what we're paying for, what we're doing, and what we're anticipating.
Okay.
And what those costs may be. I know it's hard to.
Yeah, we
figure-
can look at that. I think primarily it's similar. We're providing the spaces, but most of it is, nonprofits, things that already exist today, but we'll get you lists of what's there today and what's proposed in the future.
Well, again, that's concerning too, who's coming and going, what the coordination is with the various people within the jail itself, meaning the sheriff. And Mr. President, I just wanted to say that to the people that were working on this, I know they put in a lot of hard time. I know they were working really hard. The way you did it was way different than what we did years ago. I think, as Mr. O'Malley said, ours was literally, everything was in the public, except for, I believe, one time we had to talk about purchasing land. I think that would have been a better way to go. They chose to do it differently. That's fine, which is why I still maintain, I don't think anybody up here can tell you exactly what's going into this jail, yet we're hustling to go buy or to pay for it. And if we were building a house, we wouldn't do it this way because it would be our house and would be greatly concerned on cost.
We're happy to go through further details on plans. I know we've had that small group that has been meeting. It was monthly. We've skipped a couple months in between when we've been working on this, but happy to go through more details on plans for honestly anyone who has. We have met with Judge Russo 2 weeks ago and worked through with him, Clerk Byrd, and then this morning, the sheriff's 2 chiefs that we went through, again, kind of in relation to that committee that we have walked through the plans. There is security concerns that we aren't putting them all out on public, but more than happy to come to any of your offices and walk through.
That's a given. But I just wanted to recognize those folks that actually have been working on this hard, I do know. But still, I'm skeptical, and I have concerns, as do many of my colleagues, and I'm sure we'll get through that. Thanks a lot.
So we're running out of time, and so it can be one very quick question from Councilman Sweeney and one very quick question from Hauser, and then we gotta adjourn.
Thank you, Mr. President. My very quick question is, with the operational study that's recommended, is that can be used currently now? Or is it
That would be a
implemented?
question to the sheriff. I don't have anything
Yeah, because
to do with that, but
thank
yes.
you. I look forward to getting that answered, because if we have operational, it might be moving in the right direction already. Thank you.
Super quick question, Nicole. I see cost savings is for utilities. I think I read something recently how the Board of Elections did not take their utilities into consideration and need like an extra $1 million. How is this cost savings for the jail?
So the idea here is that the systems will be more efficient in a new building than we are in the current Justice Center. So just efficiencies on utilities will bring the cost down. We also have a megawatt of solar that we're bringing to the site, and so that will be electrifying the jail. So it's not everything, but it's going to cut down on costs related to that. And those are, the panels themselves are being paid out of the EPA grant that sustainability was awarded last year, the year before. And then building maintenance, the anticipation is currently in the building, you hear it all the time, right? That things, papers are old, things are going wrong. A new building is still gonna have maintenance. People are gonna, do something in the building that, you might need to fix. You're gonna have to change light bulbs, whatever. But it should be way less than we currently spend. So we haven't quantified those numbers. However, we know that there is going to be a savings related to those.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Commissioner.
So I would like to encourage everybody to read the documents in detail, to forward questions to Trevor, who will send them to the appropriate parties and get us some answers before the next meeting. Is there any miscellaneous business? Hearing none, the Committee of the Whole is adjourned, and the council meeting will start at 5 minutes past 5 o'clock.